Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Jessica Chambers. On December 6, 2014, at 20:09, emergency services responded to a report of a car on fire in a rural area. The first firefighters to arrive discovered a burning car and began extinguishing the flames immediately. The interior of the car was filled with thick black smoke that rose rapidly. As the rescuers poured foam on the car, they accidentally saw a dark figure slowly emerging from the nearby bushes. The figure looked like a young woman. The fire department approached and discovered that it was a young woman. She was severely burned, wearing only her underwear. The extent of her injuries, with burns covering her entire body. Her clothes had been burned, her skin was melting and slowly dripping, and her entire body was bleeding. Her hair had turned into a black ash, and her face was black with soot. Rescuers carefully wrapped the young woman in a blanket as she lay on the ground, waiting for paramedics to arrive. Firefighters were at her side, tending to her. Although she could barely move her lips due to the severity of her injuries, the woman still managed to speak. When asked for her attacker's name, some emergency responders heard the names Derek or Derek. She was airlifted from the small town to a hospital in Memphis. Unfortunately, the young woman's condition became critical. With approximately 93% of her body burned, she died from her injuries just 4 hours after arriving. The victim was identified as Jessica Chambers, a 19-year-old local resident. Jessica grew up in Cortland, where her mother and grandmother lived nearby. Her father and stepmother also lived in the same town but in a different location. She was a petite woman, but Jessica had a strong and determined personality. She experienced a rather complicated living environment. About her family, her father pleaded guilty to manufacturing methamphetamine and was arrested for drunk driving in the early 2000s. In 2006, her 28-year-old neighbor was shot multiple times in her yard. Growing up in such a negative environment, Jessica developed a rebellious personality. She smoked, argued with her parents, had unstable relationships with boyfriends, and had legal troubles. Jessica's behavior became more evident at the age of 17 after the death of her brother Alan in a car accident in 2012. She moved out of her mother's house a few months later because her mother did not approve of Jessica's new boyfriend. Jessica's childhood was very difficult. Her father was in prison for a while, but in 2014, he was released and worked as a mechanic at the local police department. Jessica used to deal illegal drugs and had ties to local gangs. However, Jessica is sweet and funny, and is respected and loved by most people. News of a burning car quickly spread throughout her small town. Jessica's father was quickly notified of the car fire. Upon hearing the news, he rushed to inform Jessica's mother of the tragic incident. They rushed to the hospital. Jessica's death shocked the nation, attracting widespread attention. Hundreds attended her funeral on December 13th, a memorial service to honor an active and ambitious teenager who had been a cheerleader and had big dreams. A thorough investigation into the high-profile case was launched, attracting great public interest. To assist local authorities, the FBI, ATF, and the U.S. Marshals were called in. Initial investigations suggested that the fire may have been caused by a car accident, but this theory was quickly dismissed. A closer inspection of the scene revealed no signs of emergency braking or obstructions, and an examination of the burned-out vehicle revealed no damage or signs of collision on the body. Arson therefore became the leading theory, but the police faced a challenge due to a lack of clues and evidence, slowing down the investigation. Following her death, some believed that Jessica had inadvertently put herself in danger by associating with a local gang. However, gang members have strongly denied any involvement and sent condolences to Jessica's family. The police have summoned several people for questioning, but have yet to gather any clues. The investigation has stalled. No suspects have been found, nor a motive for such a brutal act. Public pressure for the investigation to seek justice has slowed the investigation and continuously provided false clues about Jessica's life. Several theories have emerged on social media, suggesting that Brian Rudd, Jessica's ex-boyfriend from high school, may have acted out of jealousy. Another theory is that Jessica sold low-quality drugs to someone for a few $100s, potentially angering a drug dealer who sought revenge. District Attorney John Champion described the case as the most mysterious he has worked on in his 22 years in the county. He has been investigating Jessica's case since December, working with local police and multiple agencies, including the MBI, FBI, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives, and the U.S. Marshals Service. During the investigation, they interviewed more than 130 people, some of whom have since been re-interviewed, including individuals named Eric and Derek. Despite these efforts, no suspects have been arrested. Police have recreated the final week of Jessica's life in detail. On December 5, 2014, her last day, Jessica received a cell phone call from a friend, urging her to drive to the M&M Mini Mart. There, she purchased $14 worth of gas and left at 5:15 p.m. About 30 minutes later, at 5:45 p.m., she contacted her mother to say she would be home soon. At that time, Jessica had her hair tied in a bun and was wearing camouflage pajama pants. After a few more stops, including one at an unidentified house and another in the nearest town, Jessica arrived at the location where her life would tragically end. It is likely that the person who would eventually take her life was in the car with her at the time. Meanwhile, surveillance footage captured a man in a striped shirt filling a gas tank and then driving off in the same direction as Jessica. Despite this clue, no further information about the man's movements after that point was available. Jessica's cell phone records revealed important information about her final moments. They indicated that she spent approximately 10 to 15 minutes near a stoplight on Highway 2, heading toward Batesville. However, there was an unexplained 62-minute gap between 6:30 p.m. and 7:32 p.m. By 7:30 p.m., her phone was at the location on Heron Road where her burning car was later discovered. Many questions remain about what Chambers was doing during this mysterious hour and what ultimately led to her tragic fate. The investigation was slow going. It wasn't until December 2015, in a separate case involving charges of illegal possession of weapons, narcotics, and counterfeit goods, that 17 suspected gang members were arrested. At the time, District Attorney John Champion did not expect any gang members to be directly involved in the arson. However, during plea negotiations, gang members were given the opportunity to cooperate with the investigation. As a result, they identified Quentin Tellis, a man who had been with victim Jessica about an hour before the fire. In February 2016, police temporarily closed the case to conduct a further investigation and determine the motive behind Jessica's disappearance. The lack of an official suspect led to a surge of unfounded speculation circulating online and throughout the town. As a result, the case attracted the attention of the police online, and a Facebook page called Justice for Jessica was created, offering a $50,000 reward for any information or clues that could lead to the arrest of the perpetrator. Rumors also circulated online that Jessica, who had previously dated African American men, had been targeted by white supremacists for her involvement in interracial relationships. However, others suggested that the perpetrator was African American because Jessica had been in a gang, and that she may have tried to leave and was killed. None of these theories were ever officially confirmed. After examining Jessica's cell phone and social media activity, police were able to discover who she had been communicating with in the hours before her death. The investigation focused on Quentin Tellis, who initially claimed that their meeting had been arranged and communicated via text message, and that he barely knew her, simply asking her for a ride home. However, Further analysis of their messages uncovered inconsistencies in his story, leading to his arrest for the arson murder of Jessica Chambers. Text messages showed that Quinton had sent Jessica several intimate advances on the day of the tragedy. The timeline of events began when Jessica texted Quinton at 9:02 a.m. to say she had just woken up, and Quinton replied shortly afterwards that he had also woken up. Then, at 10:09 a.m., Quinton texted Jessica saying, "I'm ready." After the text, Jessica drove to the M&M gas station and was captured on surveillance footage leaving M&M a few minutes later, presumably to pick up Tellis. They then picked up a friend of Jessica's around 10:49 a.m. Jessica dropped Quinton off at around 2:03 p.m. Quinton sent Jessica another text, this time apparently asking for some affection. It was the fourth time in 4 days that he had asked for intimacy via text. Deleted texts were also recovered, including, "I'm so horny," and "Come lay with me," but Jessica did not respond. The passenger seat in Jessica's burned car was found reclined, a common position for intimate activity in a vehicle. Prosecutors used this as evidence to suggest that the two had engaged in or attempted to engage in intimate relations on the night of the incident. Quinton was charged with arson and Jessica's murder on February 24th. Building a solid case took time. Quinton Tellis' trial began in 2017 in Batesville, Mississippi, about 50 miles south of Memphis. To ensure safety, the trial had strict security measures in place, including segregating the jury and using metal detectors to screen attendees before they entered the courtroom. Prosecutor John Champion warned the jury that they would have to see horrifying images of Jessica Chambers' burned body and hear testimony from about 35 witnesses. According to police, Jessica met Quinton on Thanksgiving in November 2014. Quinton was 7 years older than Jessica at the time and had previously attended the same high school, which she had started in October 2014. Quinton had recently been released from prison, where he had served time for burglary. In court, prosecutor John Champion presented evidence of a series of text messages exchanged between Quinton and Jessica, including one on the day of her death in which Quinton asked for intimacy. And the front seat position of Jessica's burned car was found to be adjusted downward, consistent with the text messages found. Prosecutor John Champion claimed that Quinton attempted to end her life by strangling her, then, thinking she was dead, doused her with gasoline and set her on fire. A friend of Jessica's reported that the three of them spent the day before the incident driving together in Jessica's car. On the day of the incident, Quinton eventually admitted to police that he had seen Jessica that night and had gone to a fast food restaurant with her. However, Quinton claimed that he had an alibi, saying that he was with friends at the time of the fire. However, the friends he claimed to be with did not verify his alibi. Interestingly, a store surveillance camera captured Quinton a few miles away, buying a phone card for an acquaintance in Louisiana. FBI Special Agent Dustin Blunt revealed that Quinton had deleted Jessica's contact information and their text messages from his phone shortly after her death. When asked about this action, Quinton claimed that he was not trying to hide anything. He explained that he had deleted her contact number because he did not want to keep a deceased person's phone number in his phone since it would no longer be used. Notably, records show that Quinton sent private text messages to Jessica on the day of her death. FBI agent Dustin determined that Tellis and Chambers met through a mutual friend at a gas station in their hometown of Cortland. The two spent time together frequently, often driving around. Notably, Quinton lived with his mother in a trailer near the convenience store where Jessica was last seen before her murder. Notably, his DNA was found on Jessica's keys, and cell phone records confirmed his presence at the location on the night of the murder. Quinton, who maintained his innocence throughout the trial, was told by defense attorney Darla Palmer, who advised the jury to reject the cell phone location evidence, that it did not prove Quinton and Jessica were in the same place at the same time. Quinton repeatedly proclaimed his innocence to police. Even when threatened with the death penalty, He told police that he was telling the truth and was incapable of harming anyone. His family believes that police unfairly targeted Quinton due to the highly publicized racial tensions surrounding the case. To determine whether Jessica's murder was related to other recent fires in the area, police looked into possible connections to fires in Mississippi, Louisiana, and Alabama. However, no connection was found. Despite this, the investigation has yet to produce conclusive evidence about a motive. Police said they have pursued several theories but have made little progress. Typically, identifying a suspect in a homicide is a relatively quick process, as law enforcement often relies on witnesses and informants on the street for leads. In this case, despite extensive community cooperation, DNA collection, and polygraph testing, no arrests have been made. Quinton Tellis' 2017 trial ended in a retrial. By the time the retrial began in 2018, Quinton was facing new investigations in Louisiana. He was being investigated for possible involvement in the death of student Ming Chin Xia, as well as for using stolen bank cards. In May 2019, Quinton was formally charged with second-degree murder in connection with the death of Ming Chin Xia. Sherry Flowers testified at the second trial that she picked up a hitchhiker the night of the incident. However, she did not recognize Quinton in court and admitted that she did not know the man she picked up. According to Sherry, a man flagged her down, and she stopped. She agreed to give the man a ride, describing him as a thin to medium-sized African-American man in his 20s. This description did not match Quinton, who was 26 at the time and 5 feet 9 inches. When asked why she did not contact the police in the first place, Flowers explained that she could not remember the incident and did not think it was related to the case. Prosecutors claimed that giving a hitchhiker a ride gave Quinton the opportunity to return to Jessica's car and set it on fire. However, the defense disputed the timing of the trip, arguing that the driver, Sherry, was unsure of the exact time she picked up the hitchhiker, only remembering that she had picked someone up. During the investigation, Jessica's car keys were found in a ditch 2 days after her death, near the location where the hitchhiker was picked up. The defense objected to admitting the keys into evidence, arguing that it was impossible to prove where the keys had been before they were discovered. During Quinton Tellis' retrial, the jury visited the crime scene and heard additional testimony. The second trial was extremely emotional. Witnesses broke down on the stand, and spectators wept as pictures of the young woman, Jessica Chambers' burned stomach and face, were shown. Despite a second trial, the jury was unable to reach a verdict, deadlocked for the second time in 2 years on the question of Quinton Tellis' guilt in the arson of Jessica Chambers and her car. Although the suspect has been tried twice, no verdict has been reached and the case remains officially unsolved. Online police continue to search social media for any clues that may have been overlooked. Jessica Chambers' death initially attracted significant media attention. Over time, as media interest waned, the story attracted the attention of internet police around the world. One aspect of the case that remains widely discussed is what happened to Jessica between the time she left home and her death. On the night of the incident, Jessica left home at 5 p.m. and told her mother that she was going to a nearby gas station. Surveillance footage from the gas station shows Jessica visiting the station twice. The footage shows Jessica filling up, then walking toward the store and waving to someone off camera before approaching them. The identity of the person Jessica waved to on the day of her death remains the subject of much speculation. A personal tragedy becomes a public spectacle when it evokes widespread compassion and support. The Justice for Jessica Facebook memorial page, run by Jessica's half-sister, is a prime example. The page brought together people from around the world who were moved by the tragic story of a young woman burned alive. As a result, Jessica's family and friends received an outpouring of support in the form of letters, words of encouragement, and donations. People also donated gifts and books in her name. A memorial quilt was made of bright pink patches with a zebra print, along with her photo and her birth and death dates. The quilt was particularly notable because it was made by well-wishers from all over the world. One mysterious detail about the quilt was a square stitched with the phrase "secret group," a phrase whose meaning remains unknown to this day. No one has yet been held accountable for Jessica's tragic death. Quentin Tellis, a 29-year-old man already serving time for another crime, remains a suspect, but justice for Jessica has yet to be served. Sadly, Jessica's mother, Lisa, passed away on October 29, 2021, at the age of 52, without being able to see justice for her daughter. The possibility of a third trial in Jessica's case, which involved the horrific act of being burned alive, remains uncertain. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Cody Johnson. Cody Johnson was born on April 8, 1989, in San Jose, California. He grew up with his mother, Cher Johnson, with whom he had a very close relationship. In 2002, they moved to Kalispell, in northwestern Montana, a small resort town located in the Flathead Valley, between the lake of the same name and Glacier National Park. Cody spent much of his childhood exploring the natural beauty, taking long road trips with friends, and developing a passion for cars. According to friends and family, Cody was down-to-earth, approachable, charismatic, and altruistic. He was always willing to help people when he knew them well. Cody turned his childhood passion for cars into a thriving business. He first started modifying and upgrading cars for racing as a teenager, and later expanded it into a commercial car business. Today, Cody is a custom commercial car builder. He also worked at Nomad Communications with his uncle and a few friends who were also passionate about cars. Cody's life was almost perfect, except for someone to share it with. Cody was looking for a life partner. He had talked to friends about his desire to marry a church girl, and on Halloween 2011, he met Jordan, the woman who would change his life. Jordan Lynn Graham, born in August 1991, has lived in Kalispell with her family since she was a child. She grew up in a religious family and attended First Baptist Church, where she babysat and worked with families. Her life was rooted in faith, and her friends were all churchgoers. She dreamed of becoming a stay-at-home mom and raising a family. Jordan and Cody met on Halloween 2011 and immediately hit it off. Although initially shy, Jordan gradually opened up and started talking to Cody. She shared with him her dream of having a family and her love of nature and the outdoors. Jordan was very interested in Cody, but she was only 20 at the time and not ready for a serious relationship. They dated a few times, but remained friends. Things changed when Cody decided to pursue Jordan more seriously. He joined her church, First Baptist, and began attending her group. Soon, their casual relationship turned into something more, at least for one of them. They started dating officially in November 2011, and Cody was completely smitten with her. He admired her and wanted to be with her 24/7. According to Cher Johnson, after just a few weeks of dating, Cody was certain he wanted to marry Jordan. Even when Jordan told him she wanted to stay a virgin until marriage, he didn't change his mind. However, people close to them noticed that Jordan seemed less infatuated with Cody than before. Some suggested that this could be due to Cody's shyness, but others were concerned about the imbalance in their relationship. They did not show affection in public, did not hold hands, or flirt with each other. Jordan's friends were surprised when she accepted Cody's proposal in December 2012, after a year of dating. Although they thought she was not serious enough for marriage, they were still happy for her. In an Instagram post, Jordan showed off her new ring with the caption, "He proposed. Best early Christmas present ever." The wedding was scheduled for June 29, 2013, and planning began immediately. Cody was heavily involved, as was Kimberly Martinez, Jordan's best friend and maid of honor. Jordan, however, seemed to be the one who was most involved in the preparations for the wedding. She even performed a song that the couple had hired professional songwriter Elizabeth Shea to write. In retrospect, the lyrics seemed rather cold, almost foreboding. However, whenever Kimberly or anyone else mentioned actually marrying Cody, Jordan's mood worsened. She repeatedly asked Kimberly if she was doing the right thing. On the wedding day, she couldn't hide her true feelings about the marriage. She was very nervous, often looking down and seemingly not wanting to make eye contact with her husband during the wedding photos. However, Jordan seemed to calm down well, and by the time it came time for the first dance, she was completely focused on Cody. This happiness didn't last long. The morning after their wedding, Jordan texted her friend from the hotel where they were honeymooning. She hadn't consummated their marriage and had turned her husband down each night since their wedding. She shared her concerns with her friend, saying, "I know he's going to want to be intimate, but I'm really not interested." She also made an excuse, "My period started tonight. I really hope it works because if I'm pressured to do something, I'm going to freak out." It turned out that Jordan was extremely afraid of sex, and a mix of her faith and her true feelings for Cody made her anxious about being intimate with him. The pressure kept building until July 7th, 8 days after their wedding. Cody had planned to go golfing with friends but canceled at the last minute because Jordan had a surprise for him. After attending church and spending some private time at the lake, they joined a few friends for dinner at the local Dairy Queen. Cody went home with Jordan, and that was the last time anyone saw him. Cameron Fredrickson was the first to notice that Cody was missing. Cody was a model employee who always arrived on time before the workday began. However, when Cody still hadn't shown up well into the workday, Cameron decided to visit Cody's new house, which he had bought with Jordan before their wedding. After knocking for some time without a response, Cameron grew concerned and decided to enter the house. Finding no one inside, he began to search for clues about Cody and Jordan's whereabouts. Unfortunately, his search yielded little information. Cameron's concern turned into fear when he discovered Cody's phone in the garage. He immediately realized something was amiss because Cody never went anywhere without his phone, and leaving it behind might indicate that something terrible had occurred. After making several calls, Cameron learned that no one had seen him since the dinner at Dairy Queen at 8:30. He immediately went to the police station to file a missing persons report. And the authorities treated the case seriously from the start. Cameron's distress emphasized the seriousness of the situation. Officer Chaz Zimmerman was among the first to question Cameron. He found it unusual that it was the boss who reported the person missing, rather than the wife. Later that day, Kimberly finally reached Jordan. When she asked about the situation, Jordan explained that she had seen Cody leaving with some friends in a black car with Washington license plates. She mentioned that on their way back from the restaurant, Cody received a phone call that upset him greatly, so she thought it would be best to give him some space. However, later that night, she went to the garage to retrieve her phone charger, which she claimed she had left in their car. On her way back from the car, she received a text from Cody saying he was going to take a ride with some friends visiting from out of town. She informed the police, just as she had told Kimberly, that she didn't know who these friends were. But Cody often mentioned taking his visitors to Glacier Park. She explained to the police that she didn't recognize any of the men and that there had been no argument that night. Regarding Cody's disappearance, Jordan said she assumed he was out joyriding with his friends. When the police asked why she hadn't reported him missing, she said she didn't want to upset him if he returned in a few hours. 48 hours after Cody disappeared, his and Jordan's friends and families gathered at their home, expressing confusion about Cody's behavior. It was unlike him to leave without telling anyone where he was going. Despite this, Jordan insisted on her story until Kimberly challenged her. As the meeting continued, Jordan appeared increasingly uncomfortable. Finally, she became so upset that she threw her wedding ring across the room. While some thought it was a strange reacting mechanism, Kimberly believed something more was happening. She called her friend when she got home. The following day, Jordan was summoned to the station, where the officers questioned her about the inconsistencies in her story. One officer said, "I'm noticing some discrepancies between what you're telling me and the information I've gathered from others." He continued, "I've talked to a few people, and it's crucial for me to know you're being truthful." Jordan responded, I understand. However, the officer insisted, "I believe there's more to it." Sher Johnson met with the police that day, carrying Cody's phone records from the day he disappeared. Concerned about her son, she hoped the mysterious person Cody had called would provide clues about his whereabouts. However, it turned out to be a friend from the car community calling to return a tool to Cody. This friend was quickly ruled out as a suspect because he had a strong alibi. His wife was in labor when Cody went missing. With all leads exhausted, the police refocused on Jordan, who had a story that didn't quite make sense. The breakthrough they needed came on July 10th. A mysterious email from Carmen Tony 607 arrived, claiming Cody was dead and the search could be called off. The email said, "Hello Jordan, my name is Tony. There is no need to look for Cody anymore. He is gone." Jordan showed her best friend Hannah the email, Jordan face expressionless, and explained what Carmen Tony 607 claimed had happened to Cody. Allegedly, he had slipped and fallen off a cliff in Glacier National Park with his mysterious friends. Hannah was almost overwhelmed when she read the message. She urged a lethargic Jordan to report it to the police. "I'm freaking out." "What are you talking about?" Hannah exclaimed. "I read the email, and it says Cody's gone." "Jordan, any reaction?" Jordan wasn't crying at all. "She just showed me the email, and I started shaking. I insisted she go to the police, and eventually, she did. But I was hurrying her, urging her to go instead of just standing there looking at me. Instead of settling the police investigation, the email only increased their paranoia. It seemed suspiciously convenient that an anonymous email would provide the information they desperately needed and suggest ending the search. Detective Corey Clark was most disturbed not by the details of the message but by Jordan's lack of emotion. She seemed unaffected by a message that essentially confirmed her husband's death. After reading the email, for looking for Cody, Jordan decided to visit Glacier National Park. She led a car with her foster brother Michael and her close friend Hannah to the Sun Road, a 30 stretch of narrow winding path leading up to a treacherous mountain overlook. Throughout the trip, Hannah noted that Jordan seemed unusually cheerful. On the way, Jordan waved her hand out the window. They didn't find anything on the first day, but on the second day, Jordan unexpectedly discovered Cody's body. Among all the cliffs and roads, Jordan guided them to this specific one, insisting on her intuition despite many recommendations from Michael and Hannah. At the summit, they parked and began hiking the loop trail. This trail was notably steep and ascended to a 200-foot cliff that provided a view of a deep ravine. Jordan skillfully reached the top, maneuvering past sharp rocks to the cliff's very edge, overlooking the ravine. As she looked down, she tossed a rock and remarked, "I think he's down there." It took a particularly brave FBI agent tying himself to a tree and leaning over the edge, and the aid of several emergency services and a helicopter to confirm and extract the body at the bottom of the ravine. The body belonged to Cody Johnson, a newlywed car enthusiast, businessman, and pillar of the community. The question now was how Cody ended up there, and what did his wife, Jordan, and the mysterious Carmen Tony 607 have to do with it? Who were the mysterious out-of-town friends that were with Cody when he fell? These were the questions that hounded the Kalispell Police Department for days to come. According to the coroner's report, Cody's head and arms were the most severely damaged from the fall. Cody's family and friends were devastated by his death, while Hannah noticed that Jordan seemed relieved. Now that Cody's body had been found, the police would close the investigation. However, the identity of Carmentoni 607 was still unclear. When asked about the message, Jordan introduced them to Tony Stalkup, a friend of Cody's who was a car enthusiast. Although Tony had not seen Cody in a long time, he was willing to let them access Cody's account. However, they could not find the necessary email address, and neither Jordan nor Cody's phone records provided much useful information. As a result, they were forced to contact Google to request the IP address of Carmentoni 607's account. While waiting for more information, the police interviewed Cody's family and friends again. During this process, Kimberly eventually revealed to the police about Jordan's premarital mood swings. Jordan had repeatedly asked Kimberly if she should marry Cody. She also expressed her fears and concerns about having sex with him. Jordan regretted marrying Cody and wished she could end the marriage. Kimberly advised her to have a frank conversation with Cody about her feelings. She texted Kimberly that she was unhappy when she should have been, and was worried that speaking up would hurt Cody. 2 days before Cody went missing, she wrote that he had been aggressive and blunt with her. On July 7th, she planned to talk to him but was afraid of his reaction. After the conversation, she went to Kimberly's house and told him that things were not going well. Cody was very angry and agitated, so she decided to leave so he could calm down. She slept over at her step-parents' house that night. When the police learned of this, Jordan became the prime suspect, and the news from Google arrived at the same time. The Google results confirmed that the Carmentoni 607 email address had been created on Jordan's stepfather's computer. A brief interview with Jordan's family members identified Jordan as the email's creator, but this was not enough to convict her. However, Cody and Jordan's cell phone records helped the police gather evidence. Cell towers indicated that they had been in Glacier National Park the night Cody went missing. Furthermore, surveillance cameras had also captured the couple entering Glacier National Park at 9:17 p.m., contradicting Jordan's claim that she was not with her husband that night. Now only Jordan knows the answer. When the police called Jordan in to present evidence, she broke down. She finally told the detective her testimony of what had happened. She said she confessed her feelings about the marriage to Cody, and they had a big fight. As a result, the two decided to travel to Glacier National Park and headed for the loop. She explained that she pushed Cody and he fell. She said she felt pressured and angry. Her story ended without a clear confession, but hinted at the blindfold incident. Jordan claimed that Cody's death was accidental and that she had not planned the attack. When asked about the plan, she replied that she had no intention of killing Cody. However, she admitted that in a situation full of strong emotions and anxiety, she took the action of pushing Cody off the cliff without any prior planning. Specifically, Jordan said that Cody turned his back to her, facing the cliff, and she approached him, using both hands to push him off the cliff. Jordan also admitted to creating a private account and sending messages. In an unexpected turn of events, Jordan was allowed to leave the police station without being charged. However, the police later arrested her at Cody's funeral on July 22nd. There was a rumor that Jordan killed Cody because she wanted to end her marriage. It was assumed that she did not want to back out because she did not want to lose face for herself and her family. If Cody died, she wouldn't have to go through the divorce process. Jordan's behavior at Cody's funeral raised further suspicions, and many began to wonder if Jordan really loved Cody. Jordan faced charges of second-degree murder and making false statements. After reviewing her case, the jury added a more serious charge of premeditated first-degree murder. Her trial commenced on December 9, 2013. From the beginning, the prosecution aggressively challenged Jordan's account. As the trial progressed, her situation became increasingly difficult. The prosecutors scrutinized her story, focusing on key issues such as why she had deceived Cody's friends and family about her involvement and apparent lack of remorse. Cody's family and loved ones provided portraying her as an unfeeling wife who killed her husband to end their marriage. Although her defense team claimed self-defense, the argument was not convincing. Instead, Jordan chose to accept a plea deal. Under the agreement, she pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in exchange for the prosecution dismissing the first-degree murder charge. As a result, she received a 30-year prison sentence with no possibility of parole. Before her sentencing, Jordan tried to take back her guilty plea after learning the prosecution would pursue a more serious charge of premeditated first-degree murder, which could result in a 50-year sentence. U.S. District Judge Donald Malloy then had to decide whether to accept her original plea or grant her a new trial. On December 13, 2013, Jordan Graham received a 30-year, 5-month prison sentence and a $16,917 fine. She will not be eligible for release until she is over 52 years old. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Claire Bernal. Claire Bernal was born on August 18, 1983, in Groombridge, a small village on the border of Kent and East Sussex, England. She spent most of her childhood and teenage years there. Little is known about her parents. Claire was raised by her mother, Tricia Bernal. Her father, from whom her mother is divorced, was uninterested in Claire's upbringing and did not participate in her life. Claire was a sociable, cheerful, and open-minded girl. She attended St. Gregory's Catholic School, where she excelled academically, participated in dance, and developed a passion for fine arts. Later, she enrolled at Kent College, where she earned a bachelor's degree in science. Claire was a friendly and outgoing woman who easily became the center of attention in any group. She had many friends, and people always spoke highly of her. Despite her sociable nature, she was cautious and careful, avoiding bad habits and choosing her friends wisely. During her college years, she worked part-time as a makeup artist. This experience inspired her to pursue a career in the beauty industry. She completed specialized courses in cosmetology and makeup artistry, as well as learning the fundamentals of theatrical makeup. These skills led her to her dream job as a beauty and style consultant at the upscale store Knightsbridge, which had recently opened in the luxury department store Harvey Nichols. To take this job, Claire moved to London, because rent in the capital was quite high, so she lived with 2 friends. Despite being new to the industry, Claire quickly became a favorite with her colleagues. She was the most knowledgeable about makeup and skin care, so she took the time to mentor newbies. Claire describes herself as detail-oriented, patient, friendly, and kind. Claire loves living in the capital, where there are many opportunities to showcase her talents, learn new skills, and gain experience. During her first few months at Harvey Nichols, Claire met Michael Peake, a senior security guard who was immediately drawn to her. He showed his interest through various gestures and was good-looking. However, Michael has a complicated past. He is a citizen of both the Czech Republic and Slovakia. He was a former soldier who deserted and moved to England to avoid military service. Michael has a wife, whom he is in the process of divorcing, and a young child. Michael speaks with a very strong regional accent. He is tall and athletic, smiling and joking frequently. Michael began pursuing Claire. For about a month, they chatted happily and interacted mainly at the department store where they worked. When Michael asked Claire out on a date, she happily agreed. Their first date was at a quaint London cafe, where they spent the evening talking about their lives and sharing personal stories. During the conversation, Michael revealed that he was married but expressed his intention to divorce his wife soon because he wanted to be with Claire forever. This unexpected confession made Claire feel a little uncomfortable, but she thought that he was probably just joking. When Claire shared everything with her mother, she felt unhappy that the person pursuing her daughter was a foreigner, 8 years older than her and already had a family. Claire's mother Tricia advised her daughter not to meet this man. However, Claire felt safe and reassured her mother that everything was fine. On the second date, Michael took Claire to an amusement park, gave her a beautiful bouquet of flowers, complimented her repeatedly, kissed her goodbye and confessed his love. Claire was surprised and wondered if Michael was joking. That evening, she called her mother to express her concerns. Once again, her mother asked her to stop seeing him. Claire admitted that his behavior was a bit strange, but she admitted that she liked Michael and wanted to get to know him. So Michael asked her out on another date a week later, which she agreed to. This time Michael confessed his love again and told Claire that he would never let her go again. This left Claire confused, and even a little scared. She decided that this would be their last date and that she would end the relationship. Their short-lived affair lasted less than a month, during which they only went out 3 times. However, that was enough for Michael to believe that Claire was now his. Michael went back to the Czech Republic for a few weeks to see his wife and settle their divorce, but he was unable to resolve the issue. During this time, Claire almost completely stopped thinking about him, moving on with her life, believing that Michael was part of her past. However, one evening, he called her, asking to meet him at the airport. When Claire refused, he insisted that he needed her help. Claire finally agreed to meet him and even offered to let him stay for a day, since he had mentioned that he had moved out of his rented apartment and could not move into his new one until the next day. After entering Claire's house, Michael said that he wanted to stay and live with her. Claire was scared and asked him to leave immediately. However, Michael refused. Claire threatened to call the police if Michael did not leave. Although he eventually left the apartment, he did not leave and remained sitting on the doorstep until morning. The next day at work, Claire explains to Michael that their relationship is over and that their previous 3 dates meant nothing. However, Michael disagrees. Michael continued to prove his true feelings. He brought a large bouquet of red roses to Claire's workplace, but she refused to accept them. Michael persisted and took Claire home later, where he sat outside her apartment all night. When the neighbor tried to kick him out, Michael threatened to harm Claire instead of breaking up with her. Michael's actions and behavior are a desire to control Claire, despite Michael's assertions of love. Claire calmly explains that she has no feelings for him and regrets their short-lived relationship, to which Michael responds by hugging her tightly. He whispers in her ear, insisting that she loves him but does not yet realize it. For 6 months, Claire endured relentless stalking and harassment from Michael. Despite reporting her to the police, no action was taken. At work, Michael lurked outside her store, monitoring Claire's every move and contacting her dozens of times a day via phone calls and text messages. Michael would confess his undying love, beg for forgiveness, and beg her to come back. However, when his attempts were rebuffed, he would resort to threats, insisting that they would eventually be together. Every time Claire changed her phone number, Michael would find a way to get her number within a few days. What scared her the most was that Michael knew her home address and was always outside her house. Even when she tried to move, Michael followed her and found out her new address, causing the harassment to continue. Michael thought they were still in love. He even counted the months since they first met. In Michael's messages to Claire, he mentioned that if Claire didn't belong to him, he would make sure that no one else could have her. Claire had difficulty concentrating at work and was afraid to go out in public. Even the sound of the phone ringing startled her. Over time, the situation got worse and Claire began having nightmares at night. The emotional damage was evident as she lost a significant amount of weight. She felt tired and lost her confidence and her usual outgoing demeanor. Encouraged by her mother, friends, and co-workers, Claire finally decided to report her situation to her employer. She confided in the head of security at the mall. This man, who had experience in law enforcement, took Claire's concerns seriously and conducted a thorough investigation. He interviewed other employees and carefully reviewed the mall's surveillance footage, gathering evidence that showed that Claire was indeed being stalked by Michael. The security manager transferred Michael to another part of the store. However, this change did not significantly improve the situation. Michael continued to spend most of his time waiting outside the store, monitoring Claire's actions. Because Michael failed to perform his duties, the store management had to fire him. Despite this, Michael continued to harass Claire. Claire decided to report Michael to the police. When questioned by the police, Michael denied any wrongdoing, claiming that his intentions were sincere and that he only wanted to make it up to Claire so they could get back together. He insisted he had not threatened Claire, but his tone could have been misinterpreted. However, the police did not speak to Claire's colleagues and flatmates, who witnessed the incident and knew Michael had been stalking Claire for months and repeatedly threatening to kill her. The police treated the situation as a casual affair, finding no threat to Claire's life or health. The police did not conduct a risk assessment and Michael was only given a fine and a warning. He was also banned from the shopping center where she worked and ordered to stay away from her. A day after being questioned and notified of the ban on approaching Claire, Michael was back at her house, peering through the windows. When Claire saw him, she called the police. However, by the time the officers arrived, Michael had left the scene and they took no action against him. Claire continued to report her harassment by Michael to the police on June 10, 2005, saying that he had violated the no-contact order. However, when the police arrived, Michael was gone and no action was taken against him. Michael was eventually arrested. He cooperated with the police, surrendered calmly, and was handcuffed without resistance. After his arrest, he was charged with stalking and harassment. Michael spent a week in jail before being released on bail. The trial was scheduled for August 31, 2005, but before the trial, Claire decided to go on vacation. She went to a famous Italian resort with her mother and a friend, where they spent time enjoying the warm sea. The holiday was over. When she returned to London, she was surprised to find that Michael had stopped following her. He had disappeared. Feeling extremely relieved, she let down her guard. Michael returned to his hometown, where he spent every day at the shooting range, honing his shooting skills. He underwent training and obtained a license to purchase a pistol. Michael then brought the weapon into the UK with him and avoided all contact with Claire before their scheduled court hearing. During the hearing, he remained calm, pleading guilty and apologizing, claiming that he had no intention of causing harm. As a result, Michael was released again, without facing any real punishment. The next 2 weeks passed in silence, with Claire thinking that Michael would not bother her again. On September 13, 2005, Claire had a date with her new boyfriend that evening. She was in a good mood, chatting happily with a coworker, telling her about her plans when she heard a strange sound in the store from the entrance. Michael had been working as a security guard here for a long time, so he entered the building without being detected. Claire noticed something was wrong with her friend's expression, but before she could react, a shot was fired. Michael shot Claire point-blank in the back of the head, then fired 3 more bullets into her face as she fell to the floor. The gunshots caused widespread panic in the store, with people screaming, running, and looking for cover. Thinking that the shooter would come out of the lobby and start shooting randomly at customers, everyone prepared for the worst. Instead, Michael fired another shot into the ceiling, then pressed the barrel of the gun to his temple and pulled the trigger, instantly ending his life. Michael has been stalking Claire for almost a year, making her life miserable, and now he has brutally ended it. Michael has fulfilled his dark promise and cannot bear the thought of living without her. When paramedics and police arrived on the scene, they found the aftermath of that evening was devastating. Claire's mother, Tricia Bernal, had attended her sister's birthday party and returned home late. When she met police at the front door, she immediately sensed that something was wrong. She was told that her daughter Claire had been shot and killed. Tricia Bernal was shocked when she heard the news. Michael had asked a law student working at the department store about the potential punishment for the crime a few months earlier, which was then known to colleagues, including Claire. Claire reported her concerns to the police, fearing for her life, but no action was taken. The crime was largely due to police negligence, despite Claire's repeated pleas for help. Michael was arrested twice but released on bail, breaching a no-contact order, threatening Claire and consulting a lawyer about the punishment. However, the police felt this was not enough to jail him. He had the opportunity to leave the country, buy a weapon and return to commit the murder. There was crucial evidence, testimony from co-workers, roommates, and others who had heard Michael's threats against Claire, but this evidence was ignored by the police. It was only when Michael killed Claire and then committed suicide that the police realized the severity of the situation and the countless mistakes that had occurred. Claire's mother Tricia decided not to let this go and to seek justice. She joined forces with other grieving families who had lost loved ones in similar circumstances. Together, they launched a national program to help victims of stalking. As a result of their efforts, the law was changed and stalking was reclassified as a criminal offense. In 2012, a new law was passed that banned stalking completely. A helpline was also set up for victims who did not receive adequate support and protection from the police. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Maria Luisa Cedeno. On July 18, 2020, Maria Luisa Cedeno checked into the Lamb Mission Inn Hotel in Manuel Antonio, located in the Punta Arenas province of Costa Rica. She was accompanied by her pet dog, Mofelda, a small dog that she treated like her daughter. On her first day, everything seemed normal. Maria Luisa spent time at the beach, enjoyed lunch at a restaurant, and had some drinks. At 4:30 p.m., Maria Luisa requested a bottle of wine, a bottle of mineral water, and 2 glasses to be brought to her room. Throughout the afternoon and evening, there was no activity from her room. On July 20th, hotel staff attempted to contact Maria Luisa but received no response. A staff member had spoken to Maria Luisa, and Maria Luisa mentioned that she was living alone after ending her relationship with her boyfriend. She expressed that she was not feeling well and was traveling with only her small dog, Mofelda. She also shared that the ongoing pandemic, which had begun several months earlier, was taking a toll on her mental health. Given the difficulties she had faced in her life, she felt she needed a vacation. The hotel staff decided to conduct a routine room check. They found the front door locked from the inside, so they opted to check the patio door instead. This door was an emergency exit for guests with pets, allowing dogs to go outside. As they approached this exit, they found it was only partially open. When they entered, they smelled a terrible smell and saw blood stains scattered all over the room. In one corner, they found a dog alive but shaking with fear. On the bed, they discovered Maria Luisa's body wrapped in a sheet. Maria Luisa is a respected anesthesiologist. At the age of 43, she is the head of the Department of Anesthesiology and Rehabilitation at Cima Hospital in Escazú. Maria Luisa is highly respected by her colleagues, and she is always ready to assist whenever someone needs help. Maria Luisa's parents lived in the town of San Carlos. Friends described her as a strong, intelligent, and likable woman who loved to travel. Upon receiving the news of Maria Luisa's death, her family was deeply saddened. The mystery surrounding this case began the moment the staff discovered Maria Luisa's body. The crime scene was gruesome and brutal. After discovering the body, the hotel staff contacted the police. Upon arriving and examining the scene, the police quickly determined that Maria Luisa had been murdered. Maria Luisa's body was severely damaged and tortured. Forensic experts then arrived to collect evidence, determine the cause of death, and analyze every detail to identify the perpetrator. A subsequent autopsy discovered multiple bite marks on the body and 2 broken fingernails, indicating that Maria Luisa had fought back. The autopsy also revealed that the killer had washed the body, suggesting that he had taken Maria Luisa to the bathroom after the murder. Police determined that Maria Luisa had been murdered in the bedroom, as evidenced by the large amount of blood found there. The perpetrator then took the body into the bathroom, washed it, dried it, wrapped it in a sheet, and placed it on the bed. The killer had washed the body, possibly to eliminate evidence and hide signs of the crime. However, this effort was largely ineffective because blood was found everywhere, on the floor, walls, curtains, and bed. This brutality suggested that the attack was exceptionally violent. Experts took photographs and gathered as much physical evidence as they could. The body was sent for an autopsy, and the police started questioning hotel staff and guests who might have witnessed or heard anything. At the scene, it appeared that Maria Luisa was screaming loudly and her dog was barking. However, no one reported hearing any screams throughout the night, despite the hotel being mostly empty due to the pandemic. Only a few staff were present, and the hotel owner, Harry Bowden, lived there with his husband. Harry Bowden also let some friends live in the hotel because they were having financial problems, as the hotel was never fully booked during the pandemic. In Maria Luisa's room, a bottle of wine and 2 glasses ordered through room service were discovered. An inspection of her cell phone later revealed that she had sent a picture of the 2 glasses to a friend, but she did not mention being with anyone or waiting for someone in her room. When police interviewed Maria Luisa's friends and family to check for any enemies, they discovered that Maria Luisa always ordered 2 glasses, even when she was alone. She would pour alcohol into one glass and water into the other, indicating that she was by herself and not waiting for anyone. Police believe the attacker may have been someone who saw Maria Luisa at the hotel, noticed the back door open and took the opportunity to attack. However, the brutality of the case suggests that the killer must have had a deep hatred for Maria Luisa to have attacked her like that. This has left the police baffled. In this case, it appears that this was a murder committed by someone who knew Maria Luisa and intended to kill her. However, there is no evidence that Maria Luisa was with anyone or that she was seeing anyone. The autopsy results further revealed that Maria Luisa had been abused. She had signs of strangulation and marks on her cheeks, lips, arms, and chest. Since Maria Luisa did not scream, the police suspect that there were several people attacking her, rather than one person. Police believe that 2 people held Maria Luisa down while a 3rd person raped her. An analysis of Maria Luisa's body found no evidence of rope or restraints. Police also speculated that the attackers may have gagged Maria Luisa by stuffing something into her mouth, allowing them to carry out the attack undetected. It didn't take long for police to find their first suspect, a man who was staying at the hotel with several fresh injuries that looked like scrapes and bruises. The man was Herrera, who worked at a nightclub in the city and was staying at the hotel at the time of the murder. Herrera was arrested. His footprints were compared to those found at the murder scene, and 2 of them matched Herrera's footprints, which were found on the porcelain floor in front of the bed in the bedroom. A second suspect, Luis Carlos Miranda, was arrested after a hotel security guard reported seeing him walking the hallways at night with suspect Herrera. After Herrera was taken into custody, Luis Carlos Miranda was questioned to determine if he was connected to the case. Dental tests were conducted, which revealed his dental records matched the bite marks found on Maria Luisa's body. Hotel staff reported that they saw Maria Luisa meet with Luis Carlos Miranda and Herrera on a few occasions, but these encounters were casual, with no indication that they knew each other well. They simply greeted each other and exchanged pleasantries. This casual interaction may have been due to the small number of guests in the hotel at the time. Two friends, Luis Carlos Miranda and Herrera, were staying at the hotel due to financial difficulties during the pandemic. The hotel owner, Harry Bowden, had allowed them to live on his property. When the police discovered matching footprints and bite marks that implicated Luis Carlos Miranda and Herrera, they brought Harry Bowden in for questioning. During questioning, Harry Bowden shared that he and his husband had dinner with Luis Carlos Miranda and Herrera on the night of July 19, 2020. After dinner, the four men went to a private pool area. Harry Bowden explained that in exchange for their stay at the hotel, Luis Carlos Miranda worked on the hotel's marketing website, while Herrera worked as a chef and bartender. Harry Bowden and the suspects Herrera and Miranda were acquaintances and became friends over time. About a year before the murder, they began living in the hotel and began spending more time together, eating out and socializing. Meeting up led to a friendship between the four men. However, during the investigation, in August 2020, Harry Bowden cooperated with the police and gave an interview, but he was later arrested. Because his dental records matched two bite marks on Maria Luisa's body, police continued to seize the phones of all the arrested suspects and found compromising text messages between Luis Carlos Miranda and Harry Bowden. These messages, sent a few days before the incident, had Miranda inviting hotel owner Harry Bowden to have an intimate relationship with a woman while Miranda was watching the woman. Textual evidence combined with physical evidence led police to arrest three suspects to build a case. Harry Bowden's husband was the only suspect not arrested due to lack of evidence, including no matching fingerprints, text messages, or bite marks on Maria Luisa's body. The prosecution charged Harry Bowden, Teodoro Herrera, and Luis Carlos Miranda with the murder of Maria Luisa Cedeno. The defense team for the suspects argued that the bite mark evidence was inconclusive, suggesting none of them were involved. Before the trial, Harry Bowden's lawyer asked for house arrest, citing two reasons. First, the country's pandemic posed a danger to Harry Bowden, who is 69 years old. Second, he had just undergone knee surgery and had difficulty walking, often relying on a cane. As a result, the court approved the house arrest order, allowing Harry Bowden to return to the hotel. Although confined to the hotel grounds, he still enjoyed a lavish lifestyle, complete with servants, restaurants, and swimming pools. On September 13, 2022, the public trial of Harry Bowden, Teodoro Herrera, and Luis Carlos Miranda began, where text message evidence and dental records were presented. At that time, the prosecution had difficulty proving the involvement of Harry Bowden and Luis Carlos Miranda. Although text messages were found and bite marks were allegedly found on Maria Luisa's body, the bite marks could not prove who committed the murder. On the contrary, there was a large amount of evidence against Teodoro Herrera. A bloodstain was found, and he had superficial injuries. Furthermore, his blood was found under Maria Luisa's fingernails and on several personal items, such as a watch and a cell phone, which were in Teodoro Herrera's room at the time of the search. As a result of the trial, Teodoro Herrera was sentenced to 50 years in prison for murder and rape. In contrast, Harry Bowden and Luis Carlos Miranda were declared innocent due to insufficient physical evidence linking them to the crimes. Although the case was resolved, Maria Luisa Cedeno's family, satisfied with Teodoro Herrera's verdict, was not satisfied with the acquittal of Harry Bowden and Luis Carlos Miranda. Hello again, true crime fans, we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Polly Klaas. Polly Klaas was born on January 3, 1981, in Fairfax, California. She lived with her parents, Mark and Eva, and her younger sister Annie. When Polly was very young, her parents divorced. Afterwards, Polly, her younger sister, and their mother moved to Petaluma, California. Mark has started a new relationship after he and Eva divorced, and Polly gets along well with her father's new partner. After her parents got divorced, Polly made a conscious effort to maintain a good relationship with both her mother and father, helping to keep the peace within the family. As a child, Polly was described as quiet and innocent. Although she had few friends and was generally shy, she excelled in theater. Polly actively participated in school plays, community musicals, and often secured lead roles. Her passion for theater fueled her dream of becoming a talented actress in the musical theater field. Besides, Polly also enjoys having sleepovers at friends' houses or inviting them to her house. These sleepovers are usually with her close group of friends. On October 1, 1993, Polly invited two friends, Jillian and Kate, to her home for a sleepover. Her mother, Eva, agreed to let the girls spend the night. That evening, the three girls had dinner and spent the first few hours together without incident. When Eva started feeling unwell with a bad headache, she decided to go to bed, around 9:45 p.m., and asked the girls to wake her if they needed anything. Eva later said she took 2 sleeping pills and fell asleep after 11 p.m. She was suddenly awakened by Jillian and Kate screaming. The girls frantically told Eva that Polly had been taken by a man who broke into the house. Eva immediately called the police and then checked on her other daughter, Annie. She was in the room, and she didn't seem to know what was going on. When the police arrived, they questioned Jillian and Kate. According to the girls, they had been in Polly's room playing, trying on different costumes for Halloween. It was around 11 p.m. when Polly suggested it was bedtime, and her friends concurred. And when Polly went to get the inflatable bed from her mother, she met a man standing at the door. The man held a knife and was not wearing a mask. But since we're approaching Halloween, the girls initially thought it was a joke and started laughing. However, they quickly realized the situation was not a joke at all. A man forcefully entered a house and became enraged when the 3 girls inside began to laugh. In a fit of anger, he restrained Jillian and Kate by tying their hands and feet, and then demanded to know who lived in the house. Each girl replied that it was Polly. The man then proceeded to cover Jillian and Kate's heads with pillowcases and instructed them to count to 1,000. He told them that he would temporarily take Polly away, but promised to return her shortly. However, once Jillian and Kate realized the man had left the house, they tried to free themselves, which took approximately half an hour. They left the room and immediately informed Eva that Polly was missing and that a man had taken her. They reported the incident to the police, providing a brief description of the man. This allowed the officers to create a sketch of the suspect to aid in the search. Unfortunately, there was limited evidence found at the scene. A few footprints were discovered, but they all belonged to Polly, Eva, Annie, or friends who had visited the house in the days leading up to the incident. Some fabric fibers found on the carpet in Polly's room were significantly different from those in the carpet at her home. Analysis revealed that they belonged to a car's carpet. Police searched cars belonging to people the family knew but found no match, leading them to believe the fibers came from the kidnapper's car. A palm print was also found, but it couldn't be matched to anyone in the databases at the time because fingerprinting and DNA technology weren't advanced enough. However, the print was saved for possible comparison to a suspect in the future. In addition to the fibers, a piece of fabric resembling silk was found in Polly's room. It appeared to have been cut from a garment with scissors and had a unique pattern. The police believed this could be a valuable piece of evidence in the future. A hair was also found, but its origin was unknown. The DNA technology weren't developed at the time prevented analysis, making it impossible to determine who the hair belonged to. The search for Polly was one of the largest in United States history at that time, with many volunteers joining in. Around 4,000 people, including police and volunteers, searched her neighborhood, vacant lots, and nearby estates for Polly. The police attempted to find the driver who resembled the sketch, but were unsuccessful. Time was of the essence, as police hoped to find Polly within 24 hours of her disappearance, after which it would be highly unlikely to find her alive. The investigation was handed over to the FBI, who also actively worked to find Polly as soon as possible. However, as each day passes, the chances of finding her alive diminish. The police asked people who lived nearby if they saw or heard anything unusual on the night Polly was abducted. Several neighbors reported seeing a suspicious man wandering around the neighborhood. Although he looked unusual at the time, he did not cause any concern, so they did not contact the emergency services. It wasn't until police showed the neighbors the sketch of suspect, they realized it was the same person. To gather more information about Polly's disappearance, police interviewed every teacher and staff member at the school she attended. They focused on whether anyone knew the suspect or had any details about Polly's situation. However, none of them had any knowledge about the incident, and everyone had an alibi for the time of the incident. Additionally, none of the school staff matched the suspect's description. In their investigation, the police went as far as comparing fibers found at Polly's home with the car mats of the school staff's vehicles. But all of them do not coincide. With each passing day, the sense of desperation among the family, the authorities, and the public grew. They feared that the kidnapper posed a threat to society. This added to the urgency for the police to solve the case. A $200,000 reward was offered for any information that could help locate Polly. The reward was sponsored by actress Winona Ryder, who also held a press conference calling on the public to pray for Polly's safe return. Also, Polly's case happened in 1993, a time when the internet was still in its early stages of development. Law enforcement agencies, including the police and the FBI, were not yet familiar with using the internet to disseminate information or search for missing persons. 3 people from California took matters into their own hands and posted information about Polly on the internet. This included a picture of Polly, a sketch of her suspected kidnapper, and a reward advertisement for any useful clues. At the time, there was no social media. But the information still managed to spread and reach approximately 25 million people in the US. FBI investigators believe that social media can play a significant role in their investigation into Polly's disappearance. Although a large number of people are following the case online, but no clues from internet users could help solve the case. Nevertheless, the campaign has attracted a large number of volunteers, and several call centers have been set up to handle the volume of calls received each day. As a result, families of other missing children reached out to the Polly family for support, hoping to find their own children too. It had been weeks since Polly's abduction, and investigators were growing increasingly frustrated. They had no new leads and had yet to identify the kidnapper, making DNA comparisons impossible. Just when things seemed bleak, Polly's father, Mark, received a phone call from a girl claiming to be Polly. She explained that she was at a hotel and that her kidnapper had temporarily left her alone, allowing her to make the call. The girl then hung up, and Mark immediately informed the police. Unfortunately, the FBI did not have tools to trace the call at the time, so they had to wait for another call, in the hoping it would give them the opportunity to trace the kidnapper's location. A few hours later, the second call came. It was the same girl who had spoken to Mark earlier. The police were able to trace this call, but were surprised to find that it did not lead to a hotel, as the girl had claimed, but rather to a residential neighborhood. When officers arrived at the house from which the call was made, they discovered it was a prank call made by a teenage girl around the same age as Polly. The girl's voice was similar to Polly's, which was the reason behind the confusion. According to her, her friends had dared her to make the call. She wasn't arrested or taken to the police station, but her parents were asked to control her behavior and advise her against making such serious and false claims in the future. On November 28, 1993, about 2 months after Polly's disappearance, a woman contacted the police to report finding 3 suspicious items on her large plot of land. Upon further investigation by the police and FBI, they discovered 3 crucial pieces of evidence: a piece of silk identical to the one found in Polly's room, a pair of ballet ties that Eva reported missing on the night of Polly's disappearance, and duct tape. This led the police to speculate that Polly was likely in the area. The FBI uncovered more information that shed light on the case. On the day Polly went missing, the same woman had reported to the police that strangers had been frequently visiting her plot of land. The property didn't have a fence around it, despite signs indicating it was private. As a result, many strangers unknowingly trespassed on the land, with the owner often encountering intruders. However, one incident stood out, especially considering it occurred on the night Polly was abducted. On that evening, a man in a car drove onto the property, but his vehicle got stuck in the mud. The nanny, who looking after the homeowner's son, was the first to see the man but was too scared to approach him. The owner also chose not to approach the man due to a fierce look in his eyes, so they decided to call the police. When the officers arrived, they questioned the man, who claimed he was unaware he was on private property and promised to leave immediately. However, he asked for help pulling his car out of the mud. The police observed that the man was visibly nervous and sweating, appearing to be under the influence of a substance. But they were unable to administer a drug test and couldn't arrest him since he wasn't being violent. Finally, the policeman helped him get the car out of the mud, and the man drove away. The man's name was Richard Allen Davis, born in 1954 in San Francisco, California. Richard's childhood was marked by violence at the hands of his parents, particularly when he was 12 years old. This led to his parents' separation, and his mother completely disowned him, stating she wanted nothing to do with her son and leaving him in the care of his father. Richard's father was highly irresponsible, often leaving the house for extended periods of time, sometimes days, and leaving Richard alone. Richard sometimes stayed with neighbors or would seek out relatives. Richard started committing crimes when he was a teenager. He started stealing, got into fights, and spent several months in a reformatory school. At the age of 17, he committed a violent robbery that almost resulted in the death of the victim. The judge offered Richard 2 options: reform school or joining the U.S. Army. Richard chose to join the Army, but he was unable to maintain good behavior. As a result, he was dishonorably discharged after serving for less than 2 years. When Richard was approximately 20 years old, he was convicted of robbery, kidnapping, and received a 15-year sentence. However, due to good behavior, he was paroled after serving just 1 year. During that time, Richard was haunted by another charge. Many of Richard's friends believed he had killed a 19-year-old woman named Marlene, despite the police determining she had left willingly. Marlene's close friends suspected Richard was the culprit responsible for her death the night they attended a party together. Nonetheless, these allegations remained unsubstantiated rumors at the time. Richard was in financial trouble, and as such, he did not have a permanent home, leaving it unknown where he actually lived. The police issued an internal warning to officers, advising them to exercise extreme caution when interacting with him. Fearing Richard might flee California or even the United States, the authorities chose not to share any information with the media. Richard was ultimately arrested on November 13, 1993. He was driving under the influence and was stopped by a police officer. A breathalyzer test was administered, which Richard failed. Richard matching the suspect's description in the Polly Klaus kidnapping case. The police carefully approached Richard and arrested him for violating his probation due to he had violated his alcohol level while driving. However, the real reason for the arrest was the kidnapping. At the police station, Richard's true identity was revealed, and he was informed that he was under arrest in connection with the Polly Klaas kidnapping case. During the interrogation, Richard initially denied the charges but ultimately confessed to the crime. Further evidence, including a palm print matching the one found at the scene and fabric fibers from his car's carpet matching those found Polly's house, supported Richard's guilt. When questioned, Polly Klaas' friends identified Richard as the kidnapper. Moreover, an identical piece of fabric was found in Richard's car and on a piece of land of the woman who had called the police, providing additional evidence against him. The suspect eventually admitted to the crime after much evidence pointed to his guilt. Richard claimed that on the day of the incident, he had been using legal substances with friends and was not feeling well. Despite this, he decided to commit a burglary and drove to a neighborhood where he spotted a house with an open window. He climbed in through the window, searching for valuables, and was about to leave when he encountered Polly. She was extremely frightened, and Richard made the decision to abduct her. He put Polly in the back seat of his car and drove to a secluded area, where he sexually assaulted her. After this, he got back in the driver's seat and continued driving. Eventually, Richard's car got stuck in the mud on private property, where a woman and her babysitter saw him with Polly in the back seat. The police arrived to help him, pulling the car out of the mud. Tragically, after they assisted him, Richard drove away and strangled Polly to death. He later revealed to the police the location of her body and them to begin a search. On December 4, 1993, approximately 2 months after Polly Klaas's disappearance, her body was discovered in a grave by the side of a highway, which was dug by Richard. A forensic examination was conducted and confirmed that the cause of Polly's death was strangulation, which was consistent with Richard's previous statements. The estimated date of death was roughly consistent with the day she went missing. With this evidence, Richard went on trial for kidnapping, murder, and rape. During the trial, Richard was given the opportunity to say a few words. In his statement, he apologized to Polly's family but also made the shocking accusation that her father had been sexually abusing her. According to Richard, Polly told him that her father's actions towards her were something Richard should not have done to her. This accusation angered Polly's father to the point that he became violent and was restrained by several people in the courtroom to prevent him from attacking Richard. Everyone was shocked by Richard's words, mainly because he showed no remorse for his statement, and many suspected that Polly's father had abused her. Despite no evidence to prove it, Richard was found guilty of Polly Klaas kidnapping and murder on June 18, 1996, subsequently received a death sentence in August. He attempted to appeal but was unsuccessful. In 2006, Richard was found unresponsive in his cell after overdosing on pills, but was revived and returned to prison. Richard's lawyer made an unsuccessful attempt to appeal the conviction to the Supreme Court in 2009. The Supreme Court upheld Richard's death sentence, with his attorney indicating plans to file further appeals. These ongoing appeals have led to a prolonged stay on death row. It is anticipated that once the appeals process concludes, the execution will proceed. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Suzanne Morphew. Suzanne Morphew was born on April 11, 1971, to Jean and Adrian Alexandria. She grew up with 2 brothers, David and Andrew. Those close to her knew she was a special friend, known for her intelligence and thoughtfulness. In 1998, while still in high school, Suzanne met Barry Morphew. After 6 years of dating, they got married. Barry initially pursued a baseball career, signing with the Toronto Blue Jays, while Suzanne pursued a degree in education at Purdue University. However, after a severe injury cut his sports career short, Barry transitioned into horticulture. Suzanne had 4 years of teaching experience when Barry started his own business, and the company gradually grew over time. The couple had 2 children, Mallory and Macy. They led an idyllic life in Indiana but faced a setback when Suzanne was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. Despite this challenge, Suzanne successfully battled cancer twice. The family eventually moved to Mayville, Colorado, in 2018 in search of a fresh start and to be near their daughter Mallory, who was attending Western State University. The Suzanne moved to a beautiful 7-acre property that allowed Barry to pursue his love of hunting. He continued working as a contractor and also became a volunteer fireman. Suzanne, on the other hand, retired from her teaching career and devoted more time to her church and a new hobby, sports mountain biking. To outsiders, the Suzannes seemed like the perfect family. However, but they had their share of problems. These issues were finally revealed on May 10, 2020. Monday, May 10, 2020, was unlike any other Mother's Day celebration at Suzanne's house. While Suzanne was home alone, her husband Barry and their daughters were out. Barry claimed he had a landscaping appointment in Broomfield, about a 3-hour drive from home, and their children went on a camping trip. They all planned to return home in the evening to celebrate Suzanne's special day. However, when Mallory and Macy messaged their mother to wish her happy Mother's Day, they didn't receive a response. This was unusual because Suzanne was very active on social media. The girls expected her to be checking her phone for updates, especially since a friend's daughter's wedding was taking place and Suzanne would likely want to see photos. After waiting a few hours without hearing back, the girls grew concerned. They asked their neighbor, Martin Ritter, and his wife for help. Around 4 o'clock or 4:30 p.m. that day, Mrs. Ritter visited the Suzanne house and found it empty. She called Barry to explain the situation and he instructed her to look for Suzanne's mountain bike. If the bike was missing, he told her to contact the police. That's exactly what she did, and soon the police arrived at the Suzanne residence. Barry and their daughters returned home, they anxious to know news of Suzanne's whereabouts. A few hours into the search, the police found a crucial clue. Deputies discovered Suzanne's mountain bike in a steep ravine near the home. The location hinted that Suzanne might have been involved in an accident, but the bike and the surrounding area showed no signs of a struggle. Notably, there were no skid marks from the brakes, no damage to the bike despite its fall down the ravine, no bloodstains, and the nearby lawn appeared untouched. This evidence led the deputies to conclude that the bike had been deliberately placed in the ravine. When they shared this information with Barry, his reaction was unusual. As the investigation into his wife's disappearance proceeded, Barry shared many more implausible stories. As the investigation progressed, his behavior made it obvious that he didn't truly care for his wife. This led to unanswered questions and speculation about Suzanne's disappearance, leading many to suspect Barry's involvement. Barry gave details about his mountain lion story in a secretly recorded conversation with YouTuber Tyson Draper. Notably, Barry was absent from the search parties for Suzanne, organized by her brother Andrew. Andrew doubts Barry's story and offers another possibility: Suzanne actually went missing on May 9th, not on Mother's Day as Barry claimed. It was also discovered that Suzanne's helmet was found 1 mile from their home, in the same direction Barry's truck had traveled that morning. Investigators initially considered this an odd coincidence, but it became more significant when they discovered it was in the opposite direction of the construction site he was set to visit that day. In his initial interview, Barry said he woke up at 4:30 a.m. to an alarm clock and immediately left for Broomfield. However, telematic data from his Ford truck showed he drove 1 mile west before heading to the construction site. When confronted with this data, Barry explained that he was scouting elk earlier that morning. He then anesthetized them and sold their antlers, which was his habit. However, the officers pointed out a flaw in Barry's story: he couldn't have spotted the elk at 4:30 a.m. if he was just waking up. To address this, Barry changed his story, saying he didn't set his alarm for 4:30 a.m. and got up on his own. When asked about the day of Suzanne's disappearance, Barry described it as one of the best days they had had after a long time. He said that morning, he worked briefly with a coworker in Salida and then returned home early. After that, he went on a hike with Suzanne, followed by a grilled steak dinner and intimacy. Barry stated they went to bed together. However, it is essential to note that Barry is not a reliable source of information. During the police investigation into Barry, it was discovered that he had lied about the whole thing that happened that night. The first signs of deception were uncovered by investigators on May 9, 2020, when they reviewed the telematic data from Barry's vehicle and his phone records. Although Barry had indeed spent the afternoon and evening with Suzanne, the details did not match his initial story. One of the discrepancies occurred between 10:42 and 10:47. According to his phone data, Barry's movements around the property were unusual. When questioned by investigators about this inconsistency, Barry claimed he was probably hunting chipmunks with tranquilizers at the time. It was also revealed that Barry had switched his phone to airplane mode at 2:47 p.m. and left it in that mode until 10:17 p.m., which further raised suspicions. Additionally, investigators found evidence that contradicted Barry's claim of having a steak dinner with his wife. They discovered only one dirty dish, suggesting that Barry had eaten alone. As the investigation continued, more unusual occurrences were discovered on their plot of land. The police found additional suspicious details while reviewing the data from later that night. 1 hour after Barry claimed to have gone to sleep with his wife at 8:30 p.m., his car was seen backing up 96 feet from the driveway at 9:30 p.m. This led investigators to speculate that this could be when Barry loaded his wife's body into the truck. If he was indeed guilty. Furthermore, the records showed that between 3:25 and 3:48, the truck door opened and closed over 80 times, which, although indirect, suggested that Barry might be hiding something from the police, causing them must dig deeper into the incident that occurred on May 10th. Investigations involving Barry co-workers revealed that he had no reason to be in Broomfield on the day in question. The contract didn't start until a week later, so there was no project to inspect. Barry initially claimed that his only activities that day involved visiting the Holiday Inn, the work site for an upcoming project, a store for granola and water, and a stop at McDonald's to clean his windshield. However, surveillance footage obtained by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation contradicted his story. The footage showed that Barry disposed of 5 trash bags near the Holiday Inn and McDonald's. This increases suspicion about his actions. When police questioned Barry about the footage of him disposing of trash bags he gave an unusual explanation. He claimed that he wanted to avoid paying for disposal fees so he could clean his car. However, his story fell apart when officers searched his vehicle. Barry's suspicious behavior was further highlighted by a coworker who reported a strong smell of bleach and chlorine in his hotel room a day after Suzanne disappeared. In addition, investigators found that Barry had changed his clothes multiple times throughout that day. Investigators then delved deeper into Barry and Suzanne's personal lives. Their daughter revealed that her parents' marriage was not as happy as Barry had initially suggested. Text messages on Suzanne's phone confirmed this. Suzanne was deeply unhappy in the marriage and discussed her desire for a divorce, which Barry refused. Suzanne kept a list of grievances in her notes app, detailing a pattern of physical abuse by her husband Barry. She expressed fear of being alone with him and was concerned about his heavy drinking and attempts to take her phone. Suzanne also suspected him of being unfaithful. In an attempt to catch him in the act, she purchased a pen with a hidden recording device, but it ironically captured evidence of her own affair instead. The investigation revealed that Suzanne had been having an affair with a man named Jeff, a high school acquaintance, for about a year and a half, starting in 2018. Although Jeff initially appeared to be a potential suspect, he was later cleared of any involvement in Suzanne's disappearance. However, Investigators discovered a note that suggested Barry had found out about the affair and might have accused her of having a boyfriend just 2 days before she went missing. During their search of the Suzanne house, police uncovered several crucial pieces of evidence, including the cap of a tranquilizer dart in the dryer and the spent bullet casing in the bedroom. They also found a large crack in the doorframe and a charred remnant of Suzanne's journal in the fireplace. These findings, combined with telematic data, suggested that Barry might have killed Suzanne on May 9, 2020. Phone records from Suzanne's phone supported her initial story. After texting Jeff 53 times and sending a selfie at approximately 2:10 p.m., the phone showed no further activity. It wasn't until 2 weeks later that the public discovered Barry was a suspect in his wife's disappearance. This revelation came when police excavated a construction site in Salida, one of Barry's job sites, over the course of 2 days. In response, Barry released a video to the public maintaining his innocence. It was not until May 5, 2021, nearly a year into the investigation, that Barry was arrested. While the evidence against him was largely circumstantial, the prosecution felt confident in their case. Due to the inconsistencies in Barry's alibis, his repeated lies, and a clear motive. Barry was charged with multiple crimes, including the first-degree murder of his wife, tampering with physical evidence, possessing a dangerous weapon, and attempting to influence a public servant. Barry accepted the charges and paid a $600 fine. A preliminary hearing took place in August 2021 to decide if the case should go to trial, at which point most of the case details were made public. The prosecution presented its evidence over 4 days, outlining its theory of the incident. They claimed that on May 9, 2020, Barry killed his wife, dismembered her body in a hotel room, disposed of the tools, and buried her remains in an unmarked grave. However, Barry's defense strongly challenged the prosecution's narrative, pointing out inconsistencies in their story. They cited that cadaver dogs found no signs of human remains in Barry's car or the hotel room where he supposedly brought the body. The defense also raised doubts about the dart bullet cover, suggesting it may have been planted. Furthermore, the defense argued that Barry's dart gun was broken at the time, making it impossible for him to use it in the murder. The defense team's apparently piece of evidence was partial DNA found in Suzanne's Range Rover and on her bike helmet, which didn't match Barry. What made this discovery significant was that the DNA in her car matched DNA profiles from 3 unsolved sexual assault cases in Chicago and Arizona. This raised doubt about Barry's guilt. However, the CBI investigator in charge of the case was unable to present this crucial evidence earlier because he had to take a leave of absence for military service before. It wasn't until September 7 that the judge decided to move forward with the case, setting Barry's bail at $500,000. He was released from county jail on September 20, 2021. However, in a surprising move, the prosecution filed a motion to dismiss all charges against Barry without prejudice. At the time, the prosecution faced several challenges, including a lack of concrete evidence, as no body had been found. Additionally, the prosecution had missed multiple deadlines, resulting in the exclusion of 14 key witnesses from the trial. Barry was seen leaving the courthouse with his 2 daughters, visibly relieved. Nearly 2 years later, on September 22, 2023, investigators made a breakthrough in the case when they discovered several shallow graves in Moffat, Colorado. Suzanne's remains were identified through dental records and a chemotherapy port, found over 50 miles away from the initial search area. The discovery of Suzanne's body has raised fresh questions about Barry's potential involvement in her murder. Although the charges against him were previously dismissed, the new evidence has led many to wonder if he could still be considered a suspect in the case. Some people question how Barry could have disposed of the body without being in Moffat on May 9 and 10, suggesting he might have had help. For now, Barry does not appear to be directly involved in where his wife's body was found. The police and district attorney's office continue to investigate the case. The 12th Judicial District's district attorney stated that they cannot comment on the case until more information becomes available. While offering condolences to Suzanne's family, Barry's attorney, Iris E.T. Yen, speculates that Suzanne might have been the victim of a serial killer. After finding her remains in a cemetery, Iris thinks that law enforcement wrongly accused Barry and hopes that they will admit their mistake. Barry has initiated a $15 million lawsuit against the prosecutors, sheriff stations, and investigators because he was wrongly accused in the disappearance and death of his wife. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Adrienne Jones. Adrienne Jessica Jones lived in Mansfield in 1995. At the age of 16, she made a strong impression on the surrounding community with her beauty. Adrienne was known for her hard work in school and her passion for sports, becoming a role model for many. In 1995, Adrienne was a junior at Mansfield High School. From the moment she started studying there, she quickly became a beloved figure. Her friends and teachers admired her kindness, intelligence, and positive spirit. Adrienne was an excellent and ambitious student. She took advanced classes and spent a lot of time studying every day. Her efforts were rewarded with high grades. After graduating from high school, Adrienne planned to become a veterinarian. In addition to her studies, Adrienne is also a talented athlete. She was a member of the women's soccer team and showed impressive skills. However, after an injury, she switched to the women's cross-country team. This shows Adrienne's perseverance and adaptability in both her studies and her sports. The decision to join the cross-country team helped Adrienne maintain an active lifestyle and improve her fitness. She accepted this new challenge and worked hard to improve her fitness. With her determination and dedication, Adrienne quickly became an important member of the team. In addition to her studies and sports activities, Adrienne also worked 20 hours a week at the fast food restaurant Golden Fried Chicken. She loved the attention, especially from teenage boys in Mansfield. A close friend described her as a flirt. Adrienne spent about 2 hours a day carefully applying makeup, always wanting to look perfect. Adrienne was a normal, well-behaved teenager who still tested her parents' boundaries. She had 2 younger brothers and was well protected by her parents. Due to the high crime rate in Mansfield, her parents imposed a curfew after 9 p.m. on weekends to ensure her safety. When Adrienne wanted to go out, such as to an amusement park or the movies, she had to notify her parents and show them her ticket as proof. To prevent her from sneaking out, her father even nailed her bedroom window shut. Although it was not frequent, there were a few times when Adrienne sneaked out in the middle of the night to meet up with friends. On Sunday, December 3, 1995, Adrienne was allowed by her parents to stay up late to talk on the phone with her boyfriend, Tracy Smith. Tracy was away on a family trip for the weekend, but Adrienne was desperate to get in touch with him. While they were talking, another call came in. Adrienne's mother heard her daughter was calling Tracy. When her mother asked who was calling, Adrienne said it was David, her cross-country teammate. Adrienne said David seemed upset about something. The next morning, Adrienne's family woke up as usual to get ready for work. When Adrienne's alarm clock continued to ring in her room, her mother began to worry. She went to check on her and found that Adrienne was disappeared. Her bed was made as if no one had slept in it the night before. Adrienne's mother tried to stay calm when she realized that her 16-year-old daughter was missing. At first, she thought Adrienne might have gone for a morning jog, but she quickly dismissed the idea when she saw that her daughter's running shoes were still in her room. Although Adrienne sometimes snuck out in the middle of the night to meet friends, she had never stayed out all night like this. Concerned for their daughter's safety, Adrienne's parents called the police. However, they had no idea that miles away, a man had just made a horrifying discovery on his farm. At approximately 7 a.m. on Seton Road in Grand Prairie, Texas, about 10 miles from Mansfield, a man discovered something unusual while going to get his mail. He noticed that the gate to his home had been knocked down. Curious, he decided to check and witnessed a horrifying scene. At first, he thought it was the carcass of a dead animal on the road, but as he got closer, he realized it was something much more horrifying. A man discovered the body of a young woman and quickly called the police. When police arrived at the scene, they witnessed a horrifying scene. The young woman had been shot twice, with obvious wounds to her left cheek and forehead. It was clearly a targeted murder. In addition, police discovered the young woman with a severe head injury, along with numerous scratches and bruises on her arms and legs. These injuries may have been caused by her running over the barbed wire fence in front of the farm in a desperate attempt to escape. Police found the teen wearing pajamas, as if she was getting ready for bed before she was murdered. They suspected that the case may be gang-related or drug-related, given the execution-style nature of the murder. After finding the body, Grand Prairie Police quickly sent out a notification to agencies in the area. The notification included basic information about the victim, such as age, height, weight, and other identifying characteristics. The goal was to share information and increase awareness, in the hopes of finding a connection between the victim and missing persons cases reported to other agencies. Mansfield police quickly identified the teen murdered in Grand Prairie as Adrienne. They contacted Grand Prairie Police to coordinate the investigation. The next step was to break the sad news to Adrienne's family. Upon hearing the news of her daughter's murder, Adrienne's mother was devastated. Since Mansfield is a small town, news of Adrienne's death quickly spread to Mansfield High School, where she attended. Adrienne's classmates and friends were devastated by the news. Many theories were put forward about the cause of her death, the most common of which was drug use. Some people were also concerned about the possibility of a serial killer on the loose in the community. Her mother reported a phone call between Adrienne and her boyfriend Tracy, and another teenager named David had called at the same time. According to her mother, one of Adrienne's younger brothers heard the sound of a car engine outside the house sometime after midnight. When he looked out, he saw a pickup truck driving away. Police was trying to identify David, who had been in contact with Adrienne on the night of her murder. To gather more information, they approached Adrienne's cross-country coach. The coach said that there was a member of the team named David Graham. However, the coach was surprised to hear that David had called Adrienne, as there had been no previous indication that the two had a relationship. David Graham was a typical American teenager. At the age of 7, after seeing an air show, David decided to become an Air Force pilot and told his father about his dream. Since then, he has worked hard to make his dream come true. At Mansfield High School, David was a popular and well-liked student. He had a natural charm and was always cheerful. Although many girls were interested in him, it was Diane Michelle Zamora, a senior, who pursued David. Diane stood out from the crowd because she shared David's desire to join the military and was actively pursuing her goal. After Adrienne was murdered, the police interviewed David Graham. David admitted to knowing Adrienne since they were both on the cross-country team, but insisted that they were just casual friends. The police asked David if he had been in contact with Adrienne the night she was murdered. David denied it completely, saying that he had been home studying with his girlfriend Diane Zamora that night. The police thoroughly investigated David as a suspect in Adrienne's murder. They contacted Adrienne's friends to find out more information. One of Adrienne's closest friends said that she knew all of Adrienne's secrets, but had never heard Adrienne mention David. Furthermore, when the police checked Adrienne's phone contacts, they did not find David's phone number. This discovery further confirmed that David had nothing to do with Adrienne's murder. So the police eliminated David from the list of suspects. They turned their attention to Tracy Smith, Adrienne's boyfriend. However, the police quickly established that Tracy had a solid alibi. On the night of the murder, he was out of town with his family. In addition, Tracy voluntarily took and passed a lie detector test. This evidence further proved Tracy's innocence in the case. During his interview with the police, Tracy Smith provided important information about Adrienne's murder. He said that on the night of the murder, while talking to Adrienne on the phone, she had told him that someone named Brian had called. Based on this statement, the police investigated and identified Brian as a local teenager whose full name was Brian McMillan. The police believed that Brian might be involved in the case and needed to be further investigated. During the investigation, the police discovered important information about Brian McMillan. They learned that Brian had worked at a pharmacy near the restaurant where Adrienne worked. Brian had developed a crush on Adrienne and frequently visited the restaurant to peek at her. However, Adrienne felt uncomfortable with his constant presence. When the police interviewed Brian about Adrienne's murder, he initially denied any involvement with her. However, Brian later admitted that he knew Adrienne. The police questioned Brian about Adrienne's murder. Brian did not remember talking to Adrienne on the night of her murder. He admitted that he had been drinking that night because he was depressed and lonely. Brian also confessed that he had been at Adrienne's house on the night of the murder. At the end of the interview, the police wanted Brian to take a lie detector test, but Brian's father refused to do so for his son. A week after the police interview, Brian was arrested at home. The police thought carefully and decided to carry a weapon because they suspected Brian might have a gun. They wanted to ensure everyone's safety during the arrest. Brian was charged with Adrienne's murder. However, many of his friends spoke out in his support, describing him as a gentle person with no violent tendencies. This created a contradiction between the police's accusations and the comments of those who knew Brian. Brian's father confirmed that his son was home the night Adrienne was murdered. Brian was held in custody for 3 weeks, including Christmas and New Year's, pending further investigation and legal proceedings. During this time, the district attorney's office asked Brian to take a polygraph test, which he passed with flying colors. Due to the lack of evidence linking Brian to Adrienne's murder, the district attorney's office decided to release him. After 9 months of investigating Adrienne's murder, the Mansfield, Texas police made a major breakthrough. The information came from Annapolis, Maryland, where Diane was a student at the Naval Academy. According to reports from officers at the academy, Diane admitted to several classmates that she and her boyfriend David Graham had murdered a girl named Adrienne Jones while they were living in Mansfield, Texas. Police from Mansfield traveled to Annapolis, Maryland to question Diane shortly after receiving the information. During the interview, Diane denied all of her previous confessions. However, the Naval Academy decided to suspend her and send her home while the investigation was ongoing. After failing to get any information from Diane, the police traveled to Colorado Springs, Colorado, to interview David at the Air Force Academy. When questioned, David said he did not understand why Diane would make up the story about killing Adrienne. During the interview, David began to lose his temper and asked to write a statement. He wrote a 4.5-page confession letter detailing how he and his girlfriend Diane planned to kill Adrienne. In the letter, David recounted an incident that occurred in November 1995, when he offered to give Adrienne a ride home. On the way, they stopped in an elementary school parking lot and had sex. David felt extremely remorseful after cheating on his girlfriend Diane. He loved her very much and knew that his actions would hurt her deeply. One night, while the two were studying for the SATs together, they had an argument. Unable to bear the guilt any longer, David decided to confess. He sat down on a chair, sobbed, and admitted to Diane that he had been unfaithful. After David confessed to Diane that he had been unfaithful and had an affair with Adrienne, Diane felt extremely hurt and angry. David's betrayal had broken her heart. In a fit of rage, Diane argued and yelled at David. She even wished he were dead and felt deep hatred for Adrienne. Diane's emotions were so strong that it was difficult for her to understand and accept what had happened. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, David told Diane that he was willing to do anything to save their relationship. David revealed that he and Diane had decided that in order to save their love, they needed to kill someone. They chose Adrienne as their victim. In his confession letter, David recounted that on December 3rd, he called Adrienne and arranged to meet her secretly late at night. He told Adrienne not to tell anyone about the meeting. David had originally planned to meet Adrienne alone, kill her, and dump her body in a lake. However, at 2:30 a.m., David picked Adrienne up in his car, and Diane secretly accompanied him by hiding in the back seat. David drove to a remote location 10 miles from town. Here, he turned off the highway and onto a road called Satan Road. David stopped the car on the side of the road. Adrienne gently adjusted her sitting position, thinking that she and David were about to have a private moment. However, David had silently called Diane out of the trunk of the car. Diane appeared from behind, walked around the front of the car, and approached. As she approached, she came face to face with Adrienne, who was sitting in the passenger seat. Diane attacked Adrienne with a dumbbell from David's exercise equipment. Despite being badly injured, Adrienne escaped through the window of David's car. David and Diane panicked, so David grabbed a 9mm Makarov and chased Adrienne. Due to her head wound, Adrienne did not get far and collapsed in a nearby field. When David caught up, he shot Adrienne twice and returned to the car. After Adrienne died, the first words Diane and David said to each other were, "I love you." After David confessed to killing Adrienne, the police returned to question Diane. Surprisingly, Diane also gave her own confession. Both David and Diane were arrested and charged with premeditated murder. However, both later recanted their initial statements. David claimed that Diane was the real culprit, while Diane accused David of acting alone. In 1998, Diane's trial took place in February of that year. During the trial, several witnesses testified that Diane had shown no remorse for killing Adrienne. After deliberations, the jury returned a verdict on February 17, finding Diane guilty of premeditated murder. As a result of this verdict, Diane was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 40 years. In the same case, David Graham was also convicted of Adrienne's murder and received the same sentence, life in prison with the possibility of parole after 40 years. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Alexandria Koschel. Alexandria Koschel. Born on September 11, 1997 in St. Louis, Missouri, Alexandria, commonly known as Ally, is the adorable daughter of Cindy and Keith and has an older brother named Andrew. Alexandria has a friendly and approachable personality. From a young age, Alexandria's bright smile and warm personality attracted people. As she grew up, Alexandria's positive energy spread a positive life to those around her. She spends time with her friends, classmates, and family members. Alexandria's ability to connect with people from all walks of life is truly remarkable. Alexandria is a charming and compassionate person who always helps those in need. She attended Lindbergh High School, where she developed her passion for athletics. During high school, Alexandria met her best friend, Maddie Norris, and they formed a close bond and friendship that grew into a deep and trusting sisterly bond. Alexandria and Maddie shared a passion for exploring life and trying new experiences. Together, they faced challenges, laughed, and made lasting memories. During their time together, They enjoyed afternoons spent watching movies. One of their favorite movies was Legally Blonde. Once Alexandria got her driver's license, she and Maddie often drove around town in Alexandria's convertible. As their senior year approached, Alexandria still had no date for the upcoming prom. Although a few guys had asked her out, she had never had a serious relationship or boyfriend. Feeling frustrated, she considered skipping the event. However, Maddie asked to be Alexandria's dance partner at the prom. Alexandria was deeply moved, and so Alexandria wore a beautiful red dress to the prom. After graduating from high school, Alexandria made her dream of attending the University of Mississippi in Oxford, Mississippi come true. She was drawn to the University of Mississippi, also known as Ole Miss, because of its large student body. An avid sports fan, she was especially impressed by the school's renowned football program. In 2006, Alexandria began her freshman year at Ole Miss, where she majored in marketing and business. While at Ole Miss, Alexandria joined a sorority and became one of its founding members. She is also president of the Ole Miss Golf Club. Alexandria, with a strong passion for sunsets, she took to taking pictures to capture their beauty, with the aim of sharing this beauty with the world. Alexandria created an Instagram account to showcase her beautiful sunset photos. One night, while at a bar in downtown Oxford, Alexandria met Brandon Theld, a charming young man from Fort Worth, Texas. She was immediately attracted to him and invited him to several sorority dances. Over time, Alexandria's feelings for Brandon grew. Born into a loving Christian family, Brandon had a fulfilling childhood, with his father being a prominent doctor in Fort Worth. Growing up, Brandon had a classic Texas childhood filled with activities like hunting, fishing, and soccer. Alexandria's love of the outdoors made him eager to participate in a variety of outdoor activities. During school breaks, Alexandria's best friend Maddie from St. Louis visited Alexandria in Oxford, Mississippi. According to Alexandria, Maddie was excited to see Brandon. However, during Maddie's time there, Brandon did not come to visit and see Alexandria's deceased best friend. This left her heartbroken. Maddie witnessed Alexandria's sadness and felt sorry for her friend. Despite her trauma, Alexandria remained strong and focused on her studies at Ole Mississippi. Alexandria had a great first year, with high grades, new friends, and a strong sense of humor. The summer of 2019, right before Alexandria's senior year, was a time of great anticipation for Alexandria and her parents, Cindy and Keith. They were all looking forward to her senior year at Ole Mississippi. Alexandria's parents decided to visit her at Oxford University for a few days. They were happy to see how quickly their daughter adjusted to her new surroundings. At the time, Alexandria was busy teaching a gym class and attending summer school. When her parents arrived, Alexandria gave them a tour of the campus, showing them her favorite spots in town. The visit gave her parents, Cindy and Keith, the opportunity to see firsthand how their daughter has grown and be proud of all she has accomplished. Cindy, her mother, cooks Alexandria's favorite dinner. During the meal, they shared fond memories. Alexandria's parents had originally planned to return home to St. Louis, but she asked them to stay an extra day so they could experience more of what Oxford had to offer. Cindy and Keith agreed to extend their stay. On July 19th, after returning home, her parents called Alexandria around 7 p.m. She answered the phone, still sleepy from her nap, and explained to her mother that she planned to go out with friends that evening. Cindy told her daughter that she loved Alexandria and hung up. Little did she know that would be the last time she would speak to her daughter. Sardis Lake is a large recreational area 30 minutes from Oxford that has many hunting camps. The area is large and is patrolled by the local police department for safety. On June 20, 2019, a police officer began patrolling Sardis Lake early in the morning. As the officer drove around the lake, he noticed near a picnic table the body of a young woman lying on the ground. The officer was shocked by the discovery and immediately called for help. Other officers and paramedics arrived on the scene a few minutes later. Upon arrival, the officer found a wallet in a nearby ditch. When the wallet was opened, it contained an Old Miss school ID and a driver's license identifying the owner as Alexandria Koschel. Later, after the discovery of Alexandria's body at Sardis Lake, the police had to notify her parents, Cindy and Keith. However, they were away from home in St. Louis at the time. Her mother was devastated when she heard the news about her daughter. The news of Alexandria's death shocked her friends as well as her parents. Alexandria's friends turned to social media, using the hashtag #JusticeForAllie, to express their grief and demand justice for her. They share fond memories of Alexandria in social media posts, talking about the positive impact she had on their lives. And her friends sent their condolences to her family. Following the tragic death of Alexandria, we express our deepest condolences to the Alexandria family during this extremely difficult time. At the crime scene near Sardis Lake, police found White Claw water bottles and .40 caliber shell casings on the ground. A ballistics expert was called in to analyze the scene and piece together the events surrounding Alexandria's murder. The expert determined that the killer was initially sitting across from Alexandria on a picnic bench when they fired the first shots. However, after the first shot, the killer stood up and began walking around the table toward Alexandria, firing multiple shots as they approached. One bullet missed Alexandria and struck the wooden picnic table. While searching for evidence, police searched Alexandria's apartment but did not find her phone. However, they discovered that Alexandria's Apple Watch had some unexpected syncs with her text messages the night before she was killed. When they examined the messages, they discovered that Alexandria had been having lengthy conversations with Brandon Thade. The messages revealed that Alexandria and Brandon had planned to meet before she was killed. Police investigating Alexandria's murder contacted Brandon on Sunday morning to ask to meet at the police station. However, Brandon declined the invitation that day but agreed to meet the next day at 8:30 a.m. Monday. On Monday, Brandon failed to show up at the police station as scheduled, prompting police to trace his cell phone. Cell phone data showed that Brandon was traveling south on Interstate 55 toward Memphis, leading police to suspect that he was trying to flee. As a result, they issued an arrest warrant and alert for his vehicle, which was easily identifiable due to its unique license plate. 2 hours after the warrant was issued for Brandon, the Memphis Fugitive Task Force located his vehicle at a gas station. Brandon was found sitting in his vehicle at a gas pump, where task force agents arrested him and notified Mississippi police. When police searched Brandon's vehicle, they discovered a .40 caliber handgun. Brandon's clothing was also found to be covered in blood after he exited the vehicle. After his arrest and return to Mississippi, police began tracking Brandon in the days leading up to the Alexandria murders. On Saturday, July 20th, Brandon visited friends and went bowling. The next day, Brandon visited another friend, bringing a 6-pack of beer and the same .40 caliber handgun found in his vehicle. The friend reported that they talked for a while, but when the friend woke up on Monday, Brandon was no longer there. Brandon's background check did not reveal any history of violence or altercations. Interviews with friends and family members of both Brandon and Alexandria provided detailed information about the couple's history. They met at a local bar in Oxford during their freshman year and initially began dating. However, their relationship declined during their sophomore year. Notably, Alexandria's loved ones noticed a change in her demeanor, as she seemed to be more invested in the relationship than Brandon. This imbalance led to tension between the two. Brandon eventually blocked Alexandria from contacting him because she frequently went out at night, drank, and then called him. A year after their breakup, Brandon and Alexandria got back together the summer before Alexandria's senior year. They decided to rekindle their relationship. However, the reunion did not last long. Brandon was eventually charged with Alexandria's murder, specifically premeditated murder, which carries the death penalty. When news of Brandon's arrest spread, it caused widespread shock and attracted intense media attention in Oxford. The community was caught up in speculation and rumors as people shared their theories about the case. Reporters descended on the town, seeking interviews with people close to Alexandria and Brandon. In September 2019, Brandon pleaded not guilty to murder. As police continued to gather evidence, they reviewed text messages exchanged between Brandon and Alexandria before her murder. The messages revealed that Alexandria was concerned that she might be pregnant in April 2019, 3 months before her death. On April 14, Alexandria sent Brandon a photo of a home pregnancy test result. He made it clear that they would not keep the baby and suggested that they could buy abortion pills. Alexandria, however, did not want an abortion, and she thought that she would meet someone who would love her and her child. Despite this, Brandon was adamantly against having a child, telling Alexandria that it would ruin his life. Police also discovered surveillance footage that showed Alexandria leaving a bar in Oxford Square at around 11:45 p.m. on July 18. About an hour later, at 1:30 a.m., Alexandria met Brandon and he drove them to Sardis Lake. Brandon's defense attorney claimed that he and Alexandria had been drinking throughout the day. At Sardis Lake, they sat at a picnic table and listened to music. Brandon then got up and walked to his truck, where he used drugs. He walked back to Alexandria, returned to his truck, and retrieved a .40 caliber gun. By the time Brandon retrieved his gun, there had been a shooting on the other side of the lake. After the incident, Brandon and Alexandria continued to talk, but the situation became heated, and Brandon shot her. According to the defense, Brandon's actions were influenced by the combined effects of drugs and alcohol. The police and Alexandria's family saw the incident from a different perspective. They believed that Brandon killed Alexandria because he suspected she was pregnant, which he believed would ruin his life. To them, the murder appeared premeditated. Brandon agreed to a plea deal with state police on August 27, 2021, avoiding the death penalty. Under the deal, Brandon admitted to first-degree murder and received a life sentence without parole. Alexandria's loved ones attended the hearing. Brandon addressed Alexandria's family after the sentencing, expressing remorse for his actions and asking for their forgiveness. He acknowledged the great pain he had caused and hoped they could find forgiveness in their hearts. Although Alexandria's autopsy report showed that she was not pregnant at the time of her death, her mother, Cindy, believes that Alexandria was pregnant and lost the baby. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Shauna Nelson. Heather is a girl with a cheerful, sweet, and innocent personality. Her beauty was characterized by white skin, rosy lips, and dark hair, which captivated Ignacio, who affectionately called her his Snow White. When Ignacio asked her out on their first date, Heather was overjoyed. She eagerly shared the news with her roommates. Heather's friends were particularly thrilled for her, as she hadn't had much dating experience before, and they thought this could be the start of something special. Heather and Ignacio's bond grew stronger. Ignacio consistently showed his care and thoughtfulness by surprising Heather with her favorite flowers and coffee. His considerate nature made Heather feel loved and appreciated. After Ignacio graduated from the University of Northern Colorado, he decided to propose to Heather. She happily accepted his proposal. However, Heather made one condition clear: if Ignacio ever cheated on her, she would end their marriage immediately, regardless of any apologies or attempts to make amends. She would not tolerate infidelity in their relationship. After making her stance clear, Heather and Ignacio decided to get married within a year of their engagement. Their wedding was a beautiful and joyful celebration. Ignacio began working as a law enforcement officer at the Greeley, Colorado Police Department, while Heather worked as a supervisor at the local credit union. She quickly gained the admiration and respect of her colleagues and customers alike. They appreciated her exceptional ability to comfort credit union members during difficult times. A coworker described Heather as wonderful all the way around, reflecting her kind and caring nature. After 5 years of marriage, Heather and Ignacio welcomed their beautiful firstborn daughter, Victoria. Heather's world was filled with joy as she became a mother. Ignacio also proved to be an outstanding father. From the outside, their life seemed perfect. A picture of happiness and contentment. Heather's life took a big change in 1997 when her father suddenly passed away from a heart attack. Just a few days later, her mother received a devastating cancer diagnosis. Despite the immense grief, Heather remained committed to caring for her mother, selflessly dedicating herself to supporting she over the next several years until she passing in 2003. During this challenging period, Heather's husband, Ignacio, played a supportive role, caring for their daughter, Victoria, and helping with household responsibilities. However, as time passed, he began to develop an interest in a new woman, Shauna Nelson, a dispatcher at the Greeley Police Department. Shauna was already married to Ken, a Weld County Sheriff's deputy, and they had 2 children. The couple's marriage, however, was struggling. Ken believed their relationship problems began when she returned to work after giving birth to their second child. Initially, the connection between she and Ignacio was friendly. But it soon evolved into a flirtatious exchange of comments and playful banter, marks the beginning of an extramarital affair. Shauna's compliments had a profound effect on Ignacio, captivating him and sparking a deep attraction. As they spent more time together, their initially friendly interactions developed into a deep love affair. Ignacio's feelings for Shauna continued to intensify, transforming from casual flirting to a passionate and intimate bond. Despite being married, they couldn't resist their strong attraction to each other. As Ignacio and Shauna's secret relationship became the subject of local gossip, Heather remained unaware of the affair. No one was willing to inform her, resulting in the relationship between Ignacio and Shauna growing stronger, while Heather remained in the dark. Shauna soon discovered she was pregnant and she shared the news with Ignacio, but his reaction surprised her. Instead of being overjoyed, Ignacio questioned the paternity of the baby, wondering if it was his or her husband Ken's child. Shauna told Ignacio that her husband had a vasectomy after their second child, so Ken cannot be the father of the child she is carrying in her belly. However, Ignacio, knowing that his wife Heather would be furious if she found out about Shauna's pregnancy, Ignacio became anxious. He didn't want the baby, and he desperately looked for a way out. Shauna agreed with Ignacio's plan, and he convinced her to have an abortion. He then drove her to the clinic for the procedure. Years passed, and Heather remained unaware of her husband's affair with Shauna. However, Shauna grew impatient and eventually decided to confront Heather. One day, Shauna and her friend Michelle Moore followed Heather to the grocery store, keeping a safe distance as they observed her. Heather, still unaware of their emergence, talked to a friend on the phone. Shauna eventually approached Heather and started yelling insults and accusations at her. Heather was deeply shaken after a disturbing encounter with Shauna at the grocery store. She recognized Shauna as her husband Ignacio's co-worker from the police department, whom she had met at several work Christmas parties. Heather asked Ignacio why Shauna, who had always been friendly to her, would suddenly lash out with hurtful words. Ignacio explained that Shauna had developed a crush on him, but assured Heather that she had nothing to worry about. Ignacio stepped in to address the issue, telling Shauna to leave Heather alone. He spoke to Shauna directly, but she became angry with him. However, Ignacio's intervention failed to stop Shauna's harassment, as she continued to bother Heather. Shauna once arrived unexpectedly at Heather and Ignacio's home, demanding to see Ignacio. Heather attempts to brush off the suspicion of an improper relationship between her husband and Shauna, his co-worker, but she can't shake the feeling that something is wrong. Unbeknownst to Heather, Shauna had confided in a colleague at the county dispatch center about her affair with Ignacio. Shauna claims to be deeply in love with Ignacio, saying she felt more strongly for him than for anyone else she had ever met. However, she also expressed her frustration that Heather stood in the way of their relationship. Shauna revealed to her supervisor that she would often visit the shooting range to manage her frustrations. While target shooting, Shauna would imagine that the targets were Heather. Meanwhile, Shauna's husband, Ken, remained unaware that his wife had been having an affair with Ignacio for years, until he discovered a diary detailing her relationship. Despite this, Ken chose to stay in the marriage for the sake of their children, rather than leaving Shauna after learning of her infidelity. Shauna was aware that she was not the only woman in Ignacio's life. He was having an affair with another woman, and this realization led Shauna to closely monitor his actions. Determined to be the only woman he was involved with, she threatened to tell Heather everything if he ever left her. As time passed, Shauna's fixation on Ignacio grew stronger. In an attempt to cement her place in his life, Shauna got a tattoo of his family name on her leg in July 2005. Her obsession, however, soon turned into an unhealthy fixation that led to her stalking him. Whenever Heather and Ignacio took their daughter, Victoria, out to a restaurant, Shauna and her family would coincidentally show up. Ignacio noticed the alarming shift in Shauna's behavior but chose to continue their illicit relationship despite his growing unease. When Shauna discovered she was pregnant with Ignacio's child for the second time, she immediately informed him she intended to keep the baby. Shauna gave birth to their son, Christian, in March 2006. However, due to Ignacio's wife being unaware of the situation, Ken proposed a solution. He would raise Christian as his own, provided Shauna remained his wife. Shauna agreed to the arrangement. In the summer of 2006, a woman approached Heather with unexpected news. Shauna Nelson had given birth to Ignacio's child. Heather was stunned and confused by this revelation. Upon returning home, Heather confronted her husband, Ignacio, about the child, seeking answers. Ignacio attempted to conceal his affair with Shauna, lying to his wife once again. Heather maintained her trust in Ignacio until one night in December 2006, when she woke up to find him gone. As she waited for his return, she became increasingly anxious. When Ignacio finally came back home, Heather confronted him immediately. Unlike his past responses, Ignacio chose to be honest this time. He confessed to spending the night with Shauna and revealed that the affair had been ongoing for years. He also shared that Shauna had been pregnant with his child twice and had recently given birth to their son. Following Ignacio's confession, Heather took the action she had previously threatened. She ended their relationship and asked him to leave the house. However, her deep-seated desire to keep her family together led her to reconsider and call Ignacio the next day. Despite her initial shock, anger, and skepticism, Heather's priority was keeping her family intact. She feared that ending the relationship would have a negative impact on their daughter Victoria, forcing her daughter to grow up in a household with divorced parents. Heather had a conversation with Ignacio about their feelings for each other. Heather lets him know that she still loves him, and she believes he does too. Heather wanted to save their marriage and made it clear that she did not plan to file for divorce. However, she also made it clear that she was not ready to immediately reconcile. Before considering reconciling, Heather presented Ignacio with several requirements. First, she asked him to take an STD test to ensure his health. Additionally, Heather also suggested that they attend counseling together to help them work through the difficulties of repairing the relationship and working through any issues that led to his affair. She asked Ignacio to relinquish his father rights to Shauna's baby, and she wanted him to end his relationship with Shauna altogether. Ignacio, determined to save his marriage, accepted all the conditions Heather set in order. He took responsibility for his wrongdoing and was willing to make things right. As part of the agreement, Ignacio called Shauna and ended their affair. Heather was present and listened to the entire conversation. Shortly after Ignacio hung up the phone, Heather received a text message on her cell phone. The message included a photo of Shauna and Ignacio's son, Christian, with the caption, "IGS Flesh and Blood," beneath it. Shauna was furious about the sudden end to her relationship with Ignacio, who chose to stay with Heather instead. Feeling betrayed and abandoned, her anger intensified. In response, Shauna began publicly talking about suing Ignacio for Christian's financial support in early 2007. Ignacio and Heather were working to repair their marriage after his infidelity. Despite their challenges, the couple was determined to move forward. However, Ignacio's former mistress, Shauna, continued to harass Heather, making reconciliation difficult. Shauna's behavior became more and more aggressive, prompting Ignacio and Heather to take action. To protect Heather's car from potential damage by Shauna, they started parking it in the garage. They also sought help from a lawyer, who sent Shauna a formal notice requiring her to stay away from Ignacio, Heather, and their daughter, Victoria. The notice clearly stated that Shauna was to stop harassing and intimidating the family but she ignored the warning. Instead, she persisted in sending Heather malicious messages via text, email, and voicemail to intimidate and provoke Heather. On January 23, 2007, at around 6 p.m., Heather was walking out of her workplace at the credit union. It was just after 6 p.m. As she walked out of the building with her co-workers into the dark parking lot, she was looking forward to a quiet night at home with her daughter. But her evening took a terrifying turn when a person dressed in black and wearing a Halloween mask approached the group, aiming a gun directly at Heather. The gunman appeared to be targeting Heather specifically, and as others in the group tried to seek cover, the gunman ordered Heather to kneel down and pointed the gun at her head. Right before pulling the trigger, the gunman expressed a personal vendetta, saying, "You ruined my life," and then shot Heather twice at close range. The gunshot wounds were fatal and inflicted in an execution-style manner. After shooting Heather, the gunman quickly escaped in a nearby red pickup truck. Meanwhile, Heather's co-workers and other witnesses immediately called 911 for help. Minutes later, paramedics arrived at the scene, but unfortunately, Heather did not make it. Due to the severity of the head injuries, Heather was pronounced dead at the scene. When police officers arrived at the crime scene, a parking lot, they were shocked to discover that the shooting victim was Heather, the wife of their co-worker Ignacio. Recognizing the victim, the officers immediately notified Ignacio and instructed him to go to the hospital. Upon arrival, Ignacio rushed through the hospital hallways to reach Heather's trauma room, but he was stopped by a doctor who delivered heart-wrenching news: Heather had passed away. The news was devastating for Ignacio, and he was now faced with the difficult task of informing their 9-year-old daughter, Victoria, about her mother's passing. As the investigation continued, witnesses at the crime scene shared their accounts of the events. One witness reported seeing the shooter suddenly appear and then flee in a red pickup truck, while another suggested that the shooter might have been a woman, based on their running style. Shauna Nelson has become the prime suspect in the investigation, linked to Heather's harassment. It was also mentioned that Shauna may have had a motive for the shooting, because she had an affair with Ignacio. The police officers at the crime scene were already familiar with Shauna and her husband, Ken, a police officer. What drew their attention was the fact that Ken owned a car similar to the one used by the shooter. As the evidence against Shauna grew, police sent out an alert to all units, focusing on Shauna and the red pickup truck she was driving. Ken was on duty that night and was driving patrol car when he received a radio alert about his wife and vehicle. He quickly began looking for his wife. 20 minutes later, he found her driving his vehicle close to their home. She explained that she had been out running errands, but he became suspicious when he noticed that she wasn't wearing shoes, which seemed unusual considering it was January in Colorado. It will be very cold. What further raised Ken's suspicions was that Shauna was wearing his clothing, including his socks, underwear, and pants. After stopping Shauna, he called for assistance and the police soon arrived to take her into custody. The authorities then launched an investigation to determine if Shauna had any involvement in Heather's murder. Investigators made several key proof in their investigation. They found a pair of shoes with Shauna's DNA near the crime scene, less than 1,000 feet away. In the parking lot where Heather was shot, they recovered 2 shell casings from a .40 caliber Glock Model 22, the same type of gun used by Ken for his job. This new evidence strengthened the case against Shauna. The investigation also turned up a Halloween mask hidden under the seat of Ken's red pickup truck. The mask closely resembled the one worn by the suspect in the shooting of Heather. At Shauna's home, investigators found a bathtub filled and ready for use, suggesting that Shauna may have planned to wash off any blood after the crime. After Shauna's arrest, her clothing and hands were tested for gunshot residue. The results were positive, showing that she had recently been around a gun. With this new evidence, Shauna was eventually charged with first-degree murder. Despite matching shell casings from the murder weapon, the actual gun used to kill Heather was never recovered. The reason for this was partly due to the actions of Ken, who stopped Shauna after the murder but failed to detain her. As a result, Ken was charged with destruction of evidence and abetting first-degree murder. During her police interrogation, Shauna provided an alibi for her whereabouts at the time of the murder. She explained that she had put on some of her husband's dirty clothes from the laundry basket, which is why she was wearing them. Shauna claimed she went to the store, realized she forgot her wallet, and then drove back home. However, when questioned about Heather's murder, Shauna denied any involvement or knowledge of the crime. Ignacio was also questioned by the police but was eventually cleared of suspicion in February 2008. Shauna's trial for the murder of Heather began, with Shauna pleading not guilty to the charges. The prosecution argued that Shauna's fixation with Ignacio, a married police officer, was the primary motivation behind her murder of Heather, and that this was not Shauna's first affair with a married officer. The state negotiated a deal with Michelle Moore, a key witness and Shauna's former best friend. Michelle often accompanied Shauna when she would intimidate and harass Heather. In exchange for a reduced sentence, Michelle agreed to testify against Shauna. During her testimony, Michelle made it clear how much Shauna disliked Heather and even confessed that she helped plan the murder. In contrast, Shauna took the stand in her own defense, strongly denying all allegations against her. Shauna specifically denied having conversations about her fantasies of killing Heather or picturing Heather in her mind during target practice with others. She also claimed to have had no involvement in the killing itself, stating she was on her way to a liquor store at the time of the shooting. As part of her defense, Shauna proposed an alternative explanation for Heather's murder. She suggested that Michelle might have killed Heather to make her happy. However, when Michelle was questioned further, she dismissed Shauna's claims. The prosecution alleged that Shauna dressed in her husband's clothes during the shooting to frame him for the crime. The state claimed that by killing Heather, Shauna and Ignacio would be able to start a new life together. After 5 hours of deliberation, the jury found Shauna guilty of first-degree murder. The judge addressed Shauna, stating that she deserved the sentence she received. Shauna's former friend, Michelle, was sentenced to 9 years in prison for her role in planning Heather's murder. Following Shauna's conviction, her husband Ken resigned from the police department, filed for divorce, and moved out of state with their children. However, he eventually returned to Colorado and expressed hope that their children would one day visit Shauna in prison. Despite the circumstances, Ken believed that Shauna was a caring and wonderful mother. Heather's family is relieved Shauna is in custody and they feel justice has been served. Her loved ones hope Shauna will spend the rest of her life reflecting on the suffering she caused Heather. Shauna's actions had dire consequences. She separated Heather from her loved ones, ultimately depriving the love, care, and nurturing that a mother would give to her daughter, Victoria. Unfortunately, when Victoria, 17 years old, she died in a car accident in 2015. Her vehicle crashed into a tree after she lost control, resulting in her untimely death. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Becky Bliefnick. Becky and Tim met while studying at Quincy University. Becky majored in biology and loved tennis. Tim was an excellent football player, popular in school. Those close to Tim commented that he was a cheerful, innocent, and friendly guy. Tim always greeted everyone with a warm hug. With an enthusiastic and friendly personality, Tim was very loved by his friends. On the other hand, Becky's friends described her as a cheerful person, capable of making the surrounding atmosphere bright and positive just by her presence. With her positive energy and bright smile, Becky easily made a good impression on everyone around her. Both Becky and Tim were attractive people, and they seemed to complement each other perfectly. The combination of attractive appearance and compatible personalities made them an ideal couple in the eyes of everyone. 2 years after graduating from Quincy University, Becky and Tim decided to get married and start a new phase in their lives. Being a practical couple, they prioritized saving money over spending. Instead of buying an engagement ring and planning a lavish honeymoon, they decided to use their savings to put a down payment on their first home. Becky had dreamed of becoming a doctor, but ultimately did not pursue this career. Although she loved medicine, Becky felt a stronger calling to motherhood. She longed to experience the joy and happiness of motherhood. This dream came true when she and her husband Tim had 3 sons. Becky loved spending quality time with her children and watching them grow up. As her children grew older, Becky decided to pursue her own dreams. She chose to go back to school to get her nursing degree. On the other hand, Tim has always been a performer, from his time in community theater in Quincy to creating comedic videos on social media. He has the ability to captivate audiences with his humor and charisma. In 2008, Tim decided to challenge himself by entering the competition American Gladiators. Although he did not make it to the final round, he tried his best and made it to the final audition round of the show. In September 2019, Tim took a new opportunity to attract attention and showcase his talent. The production team of the popular TV show Family Feud invited Tim and his family to participate. However, Becky could not join him because she was attending nursing school. Determined to make the most of the opportunity to participate in the show, Tim gathered his family, including his parents and brothers. Family Feud is a television game show where 2 families compete against each other by guessing the most popular answer from a survey of 100 people. Steve Harvey, the famous host of Family Feud, asked Tim, "What do you think is the most popular answer to the question, 'What's the biggest mistake you made at your wedding?'" Tim, known for his sense of humor, surprised Steve Harvey in the audience with his clever answer. He said, "Honey, I love you, but said I do." This statement was shocking and made the whole studio laugh. Although this answer was not expected, it still won second place on the leaderboard, earning Tim and his family many points. The Bliefnick family competed on Family Feud for 3 episodes, winning a total of $20,000. The prize money was divided equally among the family members. There was one notable exception, however. Tim did not share his reward with his wife, Becky. After many years of marriage, Becky and Tim's relationship began to strain. When Becky decided to become a nurse, Tim strongly objected. He said he was worried about Becky's health because nursing was often a high-stress job. Tim also noticed that Becky often had difficulty controlling her patience and stress when caring for the children. This made him worry about her ability to handle the job of a nurse. However, Becky's friends had a different view of Tim's reaction. They believed that Tim did not want Becky to be independent and free to pursue her own interests. Over time, they noticed that Becky was no longer as happy in the marriage as she had been before. Things were going well for the first 5 years, but then Tim began to act more controlling and manipulative towards Becky. Becky's friends noticed that while Becky was putting a lot of effort into her studies and nursing work, Tim was not contributing his fair share to the household chores. Tim did not participate in cleaning and taking care of their son. Instead, he left Becky to shoulder all the household chores after her long, tiring shifts at the hospital. Becky noticed that their marriage was struggling and wanted to work on this with Tim. She suggested that the two of them go to marriage counseling, hoping that this would help them improve the situation and mend their relationship. However, Tim refused this proposal, leaving Becky feeling disappointed. Although Becky tried her best to save their marriage, Tim had other intentions. In January 2012, after 11 years of marriage, Tim suddenly filed for divorce from Becky. This decision shocked Becky, as she had shown determination and effort to maintain the relationship. However, Tim's intentions were clear. He moved out of the house and into a new place on the other side of town. Tim explained that the main reason for his decision to divorce was due to the change in Becky's personality after she became a nurse. He found that her new career had significantly affected her behavior, causing a negative impact on their marriage. The divorce process was stressful. Tim and Becky could not find common ground and their relationship more deteriorated. During the divorce proceedings, Tim and Becky fought over a number of issues, including child custody, property division, and alimony. The situation became so tense that Tim filed for a protective order against Becky. He accused her of stalking and harassing him. Tim cited one specific incident. During an parent-teacher, Becky became aggressive and argued with him. As evidence, Tim provided a cell phone video of Becky banging on his car door outside the school after the conference. Becky, however, had a different view of the situation. She believed that Tim was the one who was harassing her. Becky texted her friends to share her concerns. In the messages, she described multiple instances of Tim's violent behavior, including yelling at her, pushing her in front of the children, and throwing things around the house. Becky sent a text message to a friend, expressing her deep concern about Tim's mental health. She noticed that Tim was becoming more hostile and unpredictable. Recently, a co-worker of Becky's was murdered by her partner, which made her even more fearful for her safety. Becky began to suspect that Tim might harm her, similar to what had happened to her co-worker. As a result, Becky sent a text message to her sister, saying that if anything happened to her, Tim would be the one to pay the most attention. Becky was worried that Tim would use force to gain custody of their child. This message made Becky's sister very worried about her sister's safety. She understood that Becky's fears were justified and that Becky needed immediate help. Out of concern for Becky's safety, her sister convinced her to seek help from the Domestic Violence Support Center. After some consideration, Becky decided to file for a protective order against Tim. After reviewing both Tim and Becky's requests for protective orders, the judge decided not to grant either of them. Instead, the judge ordered them to stay away from each other's homes, except to exchange custody of their children. On February 22, Becky and Tim's 3 sons, ages 12, 10, and 5, stayed overnight at Tim's house. Tim's house is about a mile from where Becky lives. The divorce proceedings between Becky and Tim are expected to be finalized within the next week. The next day, Tim called Becky's father. He explained that he had been unable to reach Becky and that she had not picked up her sons from school as usual. Becky's father, knowing that his daughter was devoted to her children, realized that something serious must have happened that had left Becky unable to perform her duties as a mother. Concerned about Becky's health, her father drove to her house immediately. When he arrived, he entered the house and walked through the rooms, calling Becky's name. Receiving no response, he went upstairs and entered his daughter's bedroom. Inside, he witnessed a horrifying scene: Becky lying motionless in a pool of blood, her body covered in gunshot wounds. Investigators arrived at Becky's house after her father discovered her body in the bathroom. Becky's body was lying on her back, covered in blood and showing no signs of life. Investigators began their investigation by thoroughly inspecting the exterior of the home. After a thorough search, they determined that the suspect had entered the home by forcing open an upstairs window in a child's bedroom. This discovery revealed that the suspect had used a porch chair to gain easy access to the home and onto the roof. Investigators followed the trail they believed the suspect had taken. They headed toward Becky's bedroom, where the door appeared to have been kicked in or forcefully broken. The damage to the bedroom door indicated that the suspect had entered the room, most likely to look for Becky. Evidence indicated that Becky attempted to hide in the bathroom, but the suspect followed and caught up with her. The suspect eventually shot Becky in the bathroom. While examining the crime scene around the bathroom where Becky's body was found, investigators stumbled upon her cell phone. When investigators examined Becky's phone, they found a call to 91126 at 1:11 a.m. This discovery helped them develop a theory about what happened that night. They believe that while being chased by the suspect in her home, Becky tried to call 911 for help, but in a panic, she mistakenly dialed 91126. Before Becky could call 911 again, investigators believe that the suspect grabbed the phone from her. The mistaken call occurred at 1:11 a.m., so they think Becky may have been murdered around that time. However, when police investigated Becky's neighborhood, no one remembered hearing any strange noises at that time. This raised suspicions for investigators. Since Becky had multiple gunshot wounds, it was unlikely that no one heard anything. When investigators thoroughly searched Becky's home, they quickly determined that the murder was not a burglary, as nothing was missing. However, the perpetrator left behind a number of important pieces of evidence. Most notably, a partial shoe print was found near the entrance. This shoe print could help identify the make and model of the suspect's shoes, as well as provide information about the size and shape of their feet. At the scene, investigators found 8 9mm bullet casings and several small pieces of plastic scattered on the floor near Becky's body. Despite the extensive evidence collected, investigators were still unable to come to a definitive conclusion. Therefore, they decided to send the collected evidence to a forensic lab for further analysis. Detectives are investigating whether any of Becky's neighbors had installed security cameras outside their homes. They discovered that a neighbor had installed a camera on the side of their house after their car was broken into a year ago. The camera was facing the neighbor's driveway, which bordered Becky's house. It was set up to detect motion and send an alert to the homeowner. However, on the night of Becky's death, the camera did not capture any important footage. As they investigated further, investigators discovered that on the day of the murder, a man was seen walking down the back path of Becky's house at 1:05 a.m. on the security camera footage. About 48 minutes later, the man was seen walking back in the opposite direction. Becky's neighbor's security camera also recorded a similar incident about a week earlier. On February 14th, footage from the neighbor's security camera showed Becky seeing a dark figure lurking around her house. After discovering this, Becky's neighbor immediately informed her of the news. After the neighbor reported the mysterious stranger, Becky began to feel anxious. Although she had not seen anyone on her house, she had heard noises in her backyard the night before, which frightened her. Police reviewed security camera footage from Becky's neighbors and continued to search the neighborhood for additional footage. They found video from a home near the Quiney bus stop that showed a bicyclist wearing dark clothing moving toward Becky's home. The videos showed a bicyclist wearing dark clothing, matching the description of the mystery person in the footage of Becky's driveway. After analyzing the time of the footage, detectives suspected that the bicyclist was the person in the footage. Although Becky's neighbor's security cameras did not capture the mystery person on the night of her murder, police did stumble upon footage of a bicyclist heading toward Becky's home shortly before and after the incident. The video footage showed a person matching the description of the person lurking in Becky's driveway before she was murdered. While the video was helpful to the investigation, the poor quality of the footage made it difficult to gather details. Detectives were unable to determine the gender or identity of the person in the video due to the graininess of the image. However, they did notice one important detail: the bicycle the person was riding appeared to have no reflectors on its wheels. When Becky was murdered, her sister immediately thought of Tim, Becky's soon-to-be ex-husband, as a possible suspect. She had witnessed their tense divorce and shared this thought with the detectives investigating the case. Based on this information, the police began to consider Tim as the prime suspect. Notably, the murder occurred just a week before Becky and Tim finalized their divorce, making the situation particularly suspicious. During the investigation of Becky's murder, investigators made an important discovery. They found a bicycle without reflectors on its wheels, similar to the one seen on the security camera, just a block away from Tim's house. This discovery raised suspicions about Tim, prompting detectives to seek a search warrant for his home. When police executed the search warrant, Tim was cooperative and respectful. He willingly stood outside the home with the officers while investigators searched his property. On March 13, 2023, Tim was arrested and charged with Becky's murder 2 weeks earlier. When Tim's mugshot was released, Becky's family and friends were shocked by his appearance. Instead of the well-groomed man they knew, they saw a completely different Tim, unkempt and seemingly frail. Many believed that this change reflected the negative impact that the divorce had had on Tim. His unkempt hair and shabby clothes were a clear sign of the deterioration in his previously well-groomed appearance. The divorce was blamed for Tim's declining physical and mental health, according to friends and family. However, Tim explained that he had grown his hair long to take part in a charity campaign to raise awareness for cancer research. A clip from the Family Feud show in which Tim said he wished he had not married his wife when he was arrested for murdering her caused a stir. Many people saw this reaction as an uncanny sign of Tim's true feelings for his wife. Some even suggested it was a warning sign of potential problems in their relationship. Investigators carefully examined Tim's phone and discovered that he had created a fake Facebook account under the name John Smith. During the investigation, they discovered that Tim had been looking to buy a bicycle on Facebook. He was particularly interested in a blue Schwinn without reflectors on the wheels. This was notable because it matched the description of the bike found abandoned near Tim's home, just a block away. Despite the overwhelming evidence against Tim, convicting him was difficult. Tim was held without bail and ordered a speedy trial, requiring the prosecution to bring the case to trial within 90 days of his arrest. However, the prosecution faced a major challenge in convincing a jury of Tim's guilt due to the lack of two key elements that are often considered decisive in criminal cases: a confession and DNA evidence. Without these two elements, proving Tim's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt became very difficult. In prosecuting Tim for his wife's murder, the prosecution faced a major challenge. 3 months after Becky was murdered in their home, Tim appeared in court on May 23, 2023. During the trial, the state presented evidence that investigators had collected at the scene. A key piece of evidence was the plastic debris found around Becky's body. The prosecution claimed that it was from an Aldi grocery bag. They also told the jury that several similar bags were found during a subsequent search of Tim's home. The prosecution alleged that Tim used the Aldi plastic bag as a silencer when he shot his ex-wife multiple times in order to muffle the sound of the gunfire and avoid detection. They claimed that Tim left DNA on the bags. An expert who testified said it was highly likely that the DNA found on the bags belonged to Tim. Prosecutors presented evidence to the jury about a crowbar found in Tim's basement that they believed could have been used to pry open a window at the victim's home on the night of her murder. However, an expert testified that although there were some slight similarities between the marks on the window and the crowbar, she could not say for certain that the crowbar was used in the crime. The prosecution presented several new pieces of evidence to bolster its case. They presented searches that Tim had conducted on his phone, including how to open a door with a crowbar, how to make a silencer for a homemade pistol, how to clean gunpowder off his hands, and the average response time for Quincy police. An expert was called to testify that she had compared the shell casings found at the crime scene to the shell casings found in Tim's home. She determined that 27 of the shell casings from Tim's home were fired from the same 9mm weapon used in the murder. When investigators searched Tim's home, they did not find Becky's 9mm gun. Tim claimed that he had not seen the gun for months before Becky was killed. During the trial, the defense did not call any witnesses. After a 6-day trial, the jury deliberated for 4 hours before finding Tim guilty. Ultimately, Tim was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Although Tim maintained his innocence and planned to appeal, Becky's family believed the sentence was deserved. Becky's sister spoke to Tim about the consequences of his actions on his sons, emphasizing that his choices had caused them pain. Even though Becky is gone, her sister promises to keep her memory alive in the hearts of her 3 sons.